Hello, good evening and welcome to the inaugural event of the series with the fearsomely evocative title, The Americans Are Coming. A one-week debate series pitting American evangelical speakers of Acts 17 ministries with experienced Muslim speakers living in the UK to share thoughts, ideas and present the case for their respective viewpoints in the presence of open criticism. Can you hear me okay at the back? You can. Great stuff. My name is Paul Williams. The debate series is hosted by the Muslim Debate Initiative, an intellectual, political, theological initiative formed by experienced Muslim researchers, debaters and speakers, aiming at encouraging inter-community debate, discussion and dialogue. MDI believes that only through frank and open debate can deeper understanding be gained of relationships between different communities and relations between different communities be improved, and hopefully the breaking down of prejudice and false conceptions. It is with this in mind that we have invited our honoured guest to come and present to you today's event. Is Islam a religion of peace? ? Each side will consist of two teams on my right and my left. Either member of each team can speak throughout this debate, or you could have one providing support for the other. I'll just give you brief biographies of each speaker. On my immediate left is Dr. Nabeel Qureshi. He's a Christian apologist who converted from Qadianism in 2005. His conversion was a result of investigating the evidences for Qadianism, Christianity and Islam, as well as a spiritual journey involving dreams and visions. He has since attained his master's degree in Christian apologetics at Biola University in California and his medical doctorate from Eastern Virginia Medical School. He lives with his wife Michelle in Virginia. On my far left is David Wood. He is a teaching fellow in philosophy at Fordham University in New York City. A former atheist, he became a Christian after investigating the historical evidence for Jesus' resurrection. He is co-director of Acts 17 Apologetics Ministries, has been involved in more than 24 public debates with Muslims and atheists, and is a member of the Society of Christian Philosophers. David lives in the Bronx, New York, with his wife Marie and his sons Lucian, Blaze and Reed. Abdullah, on my immediate right, is a former Christian who embraced Islam at a young age, I'm not quite sure how young, he doesn't say, and has studied Islam in 14, he says, and has studied Islam in depth since he was 18. He also has an academic background in computer science. Abdullah has had a long experience in working for Islamic revival and the establishment of Islamic Sharia in the Muslim world. His activities involve speaking at community centres, universities, colleges, and appearances on various TV programmes. He has experience in debates with atheists, secularists, and Christians, and has been involved in public and radio debates with atheists and Christians. And on my far right, at the end, over that, is Yahya. He's a former Roman Catholic who embraced Islam as a teenager, and after being tested in his faith during his studies in London, England, he devoted a solid 2-year block to investigating the evidence for Islam and Christianity. After finding that Islam stood very firmly on firm ground in comparison with Christianity, Yahya decided to become involved in Islamic apologetics. He is currently studying to finish his degree in Islamic studies at university, and is also studying traditional Islamic studies in the Shia Islamic Seminary in London. He currently lives in London with his wife and shall be leaving soon for a year in Syria to further his studies of classical Arabic. The event this evening will proceed as follows. There will be an opening presentation by both Muslim and Christian speakers on the reasons why they left their past beliefs and embraced the ones they currently profess. This will be for 30 minutes each. And Abdullah on my right here will start. Secondly, then there will be rebuttals. This will be for 15 minutes each. Then we're going to have a break for 15 minutes. Then after that there will be second rebuttals, 8 minutes each. Don't worry, I'll repeat all this after the break if you forget. You probably will. After the second rebuttals there's a crossfire session, 20 minutes in total, 2 minutes comment and response time back and forth. And finally, we'll have questions and answers from the audience. And we've allotted an hour for that. We'll see how it goes with the timing. And then after that, a brief summary comment from each speaker. I'd like to explain a bit about the rules this evening. It says here very sternly, no one, thou shalt not shout, jeer, or disrupt the speakers while they are speaking. Anyone who wishes to make comments should save them for later, during the audience participation session, the Q&A session I mentioned. Applause is allowed at the end of each speaker's discussion. And please ensure that mobile phones or cell phones, as they're also called, are switched off or silenced for the evening. Thank you. And we'd like to remind everyone that in accordance with the Islamic principles of the Muslim Debate Initiative and the commonly understood principles of etiquette of discussion, that we should respect everyone's right to hold opinions and express them, even the most unpalatable ones, as long as they are expressed sincerely and for intellectually serious purposes, but not gratuitously and in a disrespectful fashion. We hope you enjoy this evening and gain a deeper insight into the Muslim-Christian dialogue and debate. And I'd like to pass straight over to Abdullah, our first speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Can you hear me? Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala Nabeel Kareem Muhammad wa ala alihi tayyibin wa sahbihi as-salihin. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming on this very nice sunny English day. It's left by sunny English day. Basically, I'd like to start off with obviously the topic today is Islam, religion of peace. And before I discuss my main argument, I'd like to ask why this question. Why this question is Islam a religion of peace? You see, let's say, hypothetically, that Islam is a religion of peace, it's a religion of war, but let's say it comes from God. Does this is an incompatible situation? Can God not? Is he unable to tell his followers to go to war? I'm sure my Jewish friend here could give you an answer to that question, because he follows the Old Testament. So this debate is not about proving Islam is whether it's from God or not, because whether Islam is mandated to fight other people or not, it's irrespective to the theologies of all the three Abrahamic faiths present in this room. The reason behind this debate is a political reason, and it's very interesting because I generally thought that a lot of evangelical Christians are apolitical, but not so the case. Maybe in America they're much more active in the political scene. I'd like to quote someone. A certain individual said, the problem is, if people are preaching a very peaceful version of Islam, then people out in the West don't know any better, or are not going to hear, are not going to believe that that Islam is peaceful. Right? We're not going to hear any West who don't know any better. Yeah. Then people out in the West who don't know any better are going to be galvanized, and their concerns are going to be squashed. Then now you have a bunch of people who are not worried about Islam. They'll think Islam is just a very peaceful religion. I heard it from the mouths of Muslims themselves. However, they've only heard of a version of Islam that is not well-founded and not well-grounded. And when Islam finally takes over, like I said earlier, there wouldn't be that peaceful version of Islam. Finally, going around preaching about the peaceful version of Islam makes people less worried about the dangers of true Islam, the violent Islam. So I kind of murdered that there, So who said this? Was it Nick Griffin of the BNP? Was it Jean-Marie Le Pen, the right-wing guy in France? No, it was my fellow colleague over here, Nabeel Qureshi. Now, here's the interesting thing. Here's a point. I find this. I'm kind of concerned by this because what's the objective going to achieve? Like Christians say, right, we're a people of peace, we only pray and so on. I say, oh, okay, so what are you going to do? All right, you told everyone now that Islam's a vision of war. What's going to happen now? We're going to pray that it goes away? No. Actions are going to start being taken. And those actions that are going to be taken are going to lead to persecution and oppression of a minority in Europe. But you might say, but Christians don't oppress people. As individuals, they're very peaceful. I say, of course. But if you read Romans 13, as a government, when it comes to oppression, the answer is, yes, they can. Just like Obama says. And this, if you look at Romans 13, the leader is the wrath of God. He holds the sword. He's the punishment of God upon the people. If he punishes you, then you are deserving of it. You are an oppressive tyrant, you're an oppressive person, or you're an evildoer. So here's what I'm concerned about. So inshallah, we're going to engage in this topic and find out whether Islam really is a religion of peace or not. and hopefully we can try to stem the tide of Islamophobia and the West's long history of demonizing its minorities, whether it be blacks, Catholics, Jews, and so on and so forth. What do you got against the religions anyway? So, the introduction to the talk. I'm going to be discussing what is a religion of peace, how is peace achieved, the Islamic method for achieving peace, and finally, conclusion that Islam is a religion of peace. So, what is a religion of peace? Well, the of peace, the part of the sentence of peace has 50 meanings. If you look in a dictionary, there's actually 50 meanings. What to be of peace? What does this mean? 50 meanings in a dictionary. I use the American Heritage Dictionary in honor of our guest from America. The word of, to be of something, can mean derived or coming from, caused by, resulting from the total or group comprising, composed or made from, associated with or adhering to, belonging or connected to, possessing or having, containing or carrying, specified as, named or called, centering on, directed toward, produced by, ensuing from, or characterized or identified by. So I tried to eliminate all the ones that wouldn't make any sense, and I got these following meanings. Islam could be either produced by peace, where it can't be peace doesn't produce anything except peace. Centering on or directed toward peace, that's one of the things that could be. Composed or made from peace. Well, no, peace is a sociological phenomena, whereas Islam, like every other religion or belief, is composed of ideas from revelation. It could be belonging or connected to peace, yeah, possibly. It could possess peace, possibly again, or it could be associated with or adhering to peace. Now, what is peace? That is a very much more tricky question. What does the original peace mean in today's context? It can either mean have a peaceful methodology. It could be referring to it's a project for peace in the world today. Not necessarily the methodology is peaceful, but it aims to create a peaceful world. Those are the two meanings of the word peace, or religion of peace that we could bring in today. Or ideology of peace. You can use any kind of definition you want. So what does peace mean? The absence of war or other hostilities. Fine, that's a good point. But it could be an agreement or treaty to end hostilities. It could be freedom from quarrels and disagreement, harmonious relations, so to speak. It could be public security and order, and it could be inner contentment and serenity. And also it could be used as a greeting or farewell, like saying peace. So I say salam. Now, what's the biblical meaning of the word peace? Maybe that's, let's go to the Old Testament, because I think Muslims and Christians, we have a common reference point in the Old Testament. So maybe what's the Old Testament definition of peace? There could be a divine peace from the giver of peace in the book of Judges. It says, then Gideon perceived that he was the angel of the Lord, and Gideon said, alas, O Lord God, for now I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. But the Lord God said to him, peace be to you, do not fear, you shall not die. Then Gideon built an altar there to the Lord and called it the Lord is peace. To this day it stands at Ophrah, which belongs to the Abiezrites. Pronounce that? Right, so in this case, God gives peace, gives a contentment inside you. It can mean satisfaction or contentment. In the book of Exodus, it says, if you do this and God so commands, you'll be able to stand the strain and all these people will go home satisfied. Be shalom, satisfied. In Leviticus, it says, it refers to security, but not absence of war, funny enough. And you shall eat your bread to the full and dwell in the land securely. I will give peace in the land, and you shall lie down, and none shall make you afraid. And I will remove harmful beasts from the land, and the sword shall not go through your land. You shall chase your enemies, and they shall fall before you by your sword. 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall chase 10,000, and your enemy shall fall before you by the sword. And this is after God has given peace in the land, that they shall conquer their enemies after these people already have peace. So it refers to security, but not the absence of war, according to the Old Testament. Very interesting. Interesting point. So, according to the biblical and English language usage, the only convergence between the English language and the Bible on this is in 3 points. A religion of peace possesses an ability to grant divinely originated peace, generates satisfaction and contentment amongst its adherents, and grant security and safety. Next point, then, how is peace achieved? Peace is achieved by providing for the mental state of human beings, which is essentially satisfying the mind's requirement to believe in non-contradictory truth of the life of this world. The next point is the heart, that it will satisfy the desire to live in security and not be humiliated, which emanates from the survival instinct innate in man. The desire to start a family and relations with love, with fellow human beings, which we call the procreational and all species instinct in man. The desire to connect with the higher power, otherwise called the spiritual or sanctification instinct. So these three things are part of the heart that religion must address to provide peace. Lastly, the physical: food, clothing, shelter, and the preservation of health. This also is required for peace, satisfaction, as according to the biblical definition. So people form societies, and what is required to cater for people, for human beings, is generally what we call creed, which in Islam we call iman. And this is providing a comprehensive and non-contradictory explanation of reality as a whole, a correct epistemology, meaning you should be able to prove what you believe. This includes what came before the universe. You have to be able to have an explanation that shows you what came before the universe, what comes after it, how you interact with what is before and what is after it, how you interact with other entities within this universe, your fellow human beings, other life forms, animate matter, should we say, and inanimate matter, which is the rest of the universe. And of course, the belief that the creed that we have should address our relationship with the higher power. Second point, that to achieve peace, what you actually must address is method. And this is what we call justice, how to actually address all these points. This justice means, or at least the method to achieve what the religion or ideology's goal is, it has to provide the rights for individuals based upon satisfying the individual's instincts to protect them in society. It must provide rights to society to protect them from criminals, recidivists, and generally those who constitute a major threat to the security, safety, and well-being of others. And lastly, it should have a mechanism in place to grant and protect these rights, which we know as a state. So, justice. Justice, I would contend, is peace. For Martin Luther King Jr. said, true peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. And Henri Frédéric Amiel, a Swiss philosopher, poet, and critic, said, liberty, equality, bad principles. The only true principle for humanity is justice. And justice to the feeble is protection and kindness. So, what is the Islamic method for peace? How does it address the mental state of human beings? First, it gives them very simple theology. See, Surah Ikhlas, saying, God is one, He is the infinite, He begets not, nor was He begotten, there is none like unto Him. So I always think that sounds very beautiful. It's a very simple proposition. Also, in Surah 51, verse 56, I have not created man or jinn except to worship me. Our purpose is to worship God. Very simple. God is one. He does not resemble His creation in any way, shape, or form. He doesn't beget or is not begotten like His creation. He is the one, the infinite, the indivisible. He has made us to worship Him. And of course, He has given us revelation. If you are in doubt of what we have revealed to our messenger, then produce one chapter like it, call upon all your helpers besides Allah, if you are truthful, in Surah 2, verse 23. So God is giving us an epistemology of how we know the truth by saying the Quran is a literary miracle which is given to the Arabs, who are people of literature, people of poetry, and is unsurpassed. The Arab grammarian, interestingly, Hamilton Glib, wrote, as a literary monument, the Quran thus stands by itself, a production unique to Arabic literature, having neither forerunners nor successors in its own idiom. Muslims of all ages are united in proclaiming the inimitability not only of its content but of its style, and enforcing the high Arabic idiom into the expression of new ranges of thought. The Quran develops a bold and strikingly effective rhetorical prose in which all resources of syntactical modulation are exploited with great freedom and originality. Also, Foster Fitzgerald Arbuthnot, a British Orientalist and translator, said, and that though several attempts have been made to produce a work equal to it, as far as eloquent writing is concerned, none yet has succeeded. So as Muslims, we have a firm basis by which we believe that we have an epistemology of what is the truth, we know what is the truth. But, and so it brings contentment to our mind, that hence we are at peace, because we don't have to believe in blind faith or anything, or contradictory doctrines. To the heart. The desire to live in security, not be humiliated. God tells in the Quran, we have indeed honored the children of Adam and provided for them means of transportation on land and sea, and given them wholesome food and exalted them above the greater part of our creation. Man is honored by God. O you who believe, let not men among you laugh at each other. It may be that the latter are better than the former. Or let not women laugh at each other. It may be that the latter are better than the former. Or defame, nor be sarcastic to each other, nor call each other by offensive nicknames. Here's what the Quran says in 49 verse 11. So respect. The desire to start a family and start relations, as we know, that Islam talks about giving of charity. It says, give charity to each other so that love may be formed between people. It says that getting married is complete, is half your faith. And the Quran says, and among his signs is this, that he has created you wives from among yourselves, that you may refine and repose in them, and he has put between you affection and mercy. Verily, in that are indeed the signs for a people who reflect. And of course, there is the desire of the heart to connect to a higher power and spiritual sanctification. Those who believe and find peace in the remembrance of God, for without doubt, in the remembrance of God do hearts find peace. Of those, and another verse, those who have faith and do good will the most gracious one, Rahman, bestow love. Again, another verse, say, O Prophet, my prophets, the people, if you love God, follow me, and God will love you and forgive your sins, for God is oft forgiving, most merciful. And it goes on and on. Physical needs. This is actually a very interesting one. The economic system of Islam. The Prophet Muhammad said, the son of Adam has no better right than that he would have a house where he should live, a piece of clothing where he would hide his nakedness, and a piece of bread and some water. As Asna said, a member of the Democratic Socialist America and Racism Watch, there are genuinely sufficient resources in this world to ensure that no one, nowhere, at no time should go hungry. The zakat was prescribed by Islam. It said the zakat are only for the poor and for the needy and for those employed to collect the funds and for bringing hearts together and for freeing captives or slaves, and for those in debt, and for the cause of God, and for the stranded traveller, an obligation imposed by God, and God is knowing and wise. The zakat, the redistribution of wealth in society. Also, interest is prohibited, and as we know in the Old Testament, interest is prohibited. Maybe we could avoid a credit crunch if interest didn't exist. As we know, the Christians abolished the law, the Catholics abolished the law of interest, and now look what's happened. The Protestants started with interest in Europe, and now look what's led them, boom and bust. And it's all down to the system which you employ, unfortunately, and it's not Jesus' system. The Prophet Muhammad also said, take notice of war from Allah, so the Quran says, take notice of war from Allah and His Messenger, regarding to those people who take interest, and deal not unjustly, and you shall not be dealt with unjustly. And so it talks about the prohibition of interest. And the Prophet Muhammad declared war on it because it causes an inequality in society. Islam rejects monopoly. Islam talks about the fact that it's not based on the capitalist model whereby there's meant to be infinite human needs and limited resources. And the economic problem is to maximize production as much as possible, and hopefully it will trickle down to the poor people. It doesn't happen like that. The Islamic system is completely different. It is not like communism, it's not like capitalism, it's in the middle. It acknowledges that human needs are limited through clothing, shelter, like the Prophet Muhammad said. It guarantees this, and then in luxuries, it is laissez-faire. We can go into that further. That's a long talk in itself. Also, regarding the method which is justice, and how Islam deals with providing rights for individuals and providing rights for society. Now you might balk at the fact that Islam says women must be covered up, they must be modest. And so obviously, Jesus' mother was modest, and in the Old Testament the women were commanded to be modest. Even Paul commands Christians to be modest and dressed in a modest way. I wonder what Paul would say if you saw some Christians here today. No offense, I'm just giving the truth here. Daniel Bell, lecturer in political science at the University of Singapore, said, liberalism, it is claimed, contributes to, or at least does not sufficiently take into account, of the negative social and psychological effects related to the atomistic tendencies of modern liberal societies. There is undoubtedly a worrying trend in contemporary societies towards a callous individualism that ignores community and social obligations, and the liberal theory does not seem up to the task of dealing with this problem. Islam deals with this problem. The Prophet Muhammad said that people are like, the situation of people are like people on a boat, on two decks. You have some on the bottom deck and some on the top deck. And when the bottom deck want to get some water, they have to ask the top deck to deliver them some water from over the side. If the people in the bottom deck said, you know what, let's not trouble those at the top, let's make a hole in our part of the ship to get water directly for ourselves. If the people at top allow them to, they would all be ruined and they'll be destroyed. But if the people at the top prevented them from doing so, they would all be saved. So Islam views that human beings have individual rights and responsibilities, and society has rights and responsibilities, and you have rights to society, and society has rights to you. Something that is in this individualistic society is lacking, unfortunately. Also, in terms of the state, we know that Islam has a state system. It is implemented by a state system. It is not just a theology. Now, all the points I said about the heart, Islam bringing peace to the heart, this is common to a lot of theologies. And you're probably no stranger to some of the prescriptions that Islam gives. But the difference is, Islam has a method to achieve a society based on justice and righteousness. Not just, well, individuals, you guys just be good, and hopefully the society will be good. It doesn't happen like that. It's like going down to, it's like abolishing the highway code and hoping that out of good grace, everyone doesn't crash into each other and they all drive properly. It doesn't work. They have to have a highway code. There have to be regulations. It is the wisdom by which God gave us the law in the first place. The companion Umayyad bin al-Ansari, this is the answer, this is a very interesting point. He said, he's a companion of the Prophet Muhammad. He said, "O people, Islam is a mighty fortress and sturdy gate. The fortune of Islam is justice and its gate is truth. If you destroy the fortress and demolish the gate, you undermine the defenses of this religion. Islam will remain strong as long as the Sultan or central authority is strong. The strength of the Sultan neither comes from flogging the whip nor killing with the sword, but ruling with justice and holding fast to the truth." This is the basis. And of course, the verses on justice in the Quran are numerous. God commands justice and fair dealing. I'm not going to quote them, time is running out. "O you who believe, for be upright for God and bear witnesses witness with justice. O you who believe, be upholders of justice, bearing witness for God alone, even against yourselves." Even as Muslims, even against ourselves. "All your parents and relatives, whether you are rich or poor, God is well able to look after them. Do not follow your own desires and deviate from the truth. If you follow, turn away, God is aware what you do. O you who believe, be steadfast, witnesses to God in justice, and let not hatred of others make you depart from doing justice. For doing justice is nearer to righteousness." Now, the question is, why does there exist punishments? It's not, oh, why is there punishments? It's horrible. Why are there punishments? This is oppressive. Really? Why are there punishments in Britain? Why are there punishments in America? The death penalty where he comes from is in America. Is that not an oppressive regime? Would you want to abolish this? Well, again, Romans 13, would say no otherwise. But, as Blaise Pascal said, philosopher said, "Justice without force is powerless, and force without justice is tyrannical." So the Quran says, "And there is the saving of life for you in the law of equality of punishment. O men of understanding, that you may become pious. There is the saving of life by executing the murderers and the rapists. We prevent them from killing and raping other people." Heck, even Paul said that the reason there is a law is for the unrighteous, to basically execute the unrighteous, to persecute the unrighteous in society. Again, the issue of submission to authority in Romans 13. It's very, I just want to juxtapose this. Everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God, consequently he who rebels against the authorities rebelling against God, what God has instituted. And those who do so will bring judgment upon themselves, for rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear upon an authority? Then do what is right, and he will commend you, for he is God's servant to you to do good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword for nothing. He is God's servant, an angel of wrath, to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Therefore, it is necessary to submit yourself to the authorities, not only because of the possible punishment, but also because of the point of conscience. This is also why you must pay taxes, for God's authorities are God's servants, and so on and so forth. He continues. Now, to the contentious issue, which everyone likes to mention, jihad. Dun, dun, dun. Should be like some lightning whenever you said jihad. Sorry. Right. The jihad is about establishing justice and preventing injustice. Simply, very simply. There is a defensive jihad. To those whom against war is made, permission is given to defend themselves because they have been wronged. The very Allah is most powerful to give them victory. They are those who have been expelled from their homes in defiance of right, and so on. Another verse, fight in the cause of Allah against those who fight against you, but do not transgress the limits, the rules of warfare that Islam has given to us. Lo, Allah loves not the transgressors, and fight them until persecution is no more, and our religion is for God. For if they desist, then let them be no hostility against the transgressors. And remember, in the verse of Quran, Allah says, oppression is worse than killing. As Muslims, oppression for us, oppression is much worse than killing. Because what leads to wars, what leads to resistance and fighting around the world, and people trying to fight for their rights, is because they are oppressed. And even people will fight and die because they are oppressed. So oppression is worse than killing. So for us, we fight against oppression. Now here is the contentious issue, the offensive jihad. And what is the matter of you that you fight not in the cause of Allah for the oppressed among men, women and children who say, our Lord, take us out of this city of oppressive people and appoint for us yourself a protector and appoint for us from someone from yourself who is a helper, and fight them until persecution is no more and religion is God, and so on again. And if they seek peace, then you seek peace and trust in God, and He is the one who hears and knows all things. And another verse. 5 minutes. Thank you. Fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold forbidden that which Allah has held forbidden, and His Messenger, Allah and His Messenger have forbidden, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, even if they are from the people of the book, until they pay jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. Now, I mentioned the word subdued. In the Arabic, it means not to be aggressive, not to be fighty and so on. And you know what? With Romans 13, it's excellent. Because if ever there was a situation in history where Muslims ruled over Christians, the Christians would have to accept Islamic rule as being divinely instituted according to Romans 13. And of course, we are just. The Muslims have been just. And again, I'm going to got evidence to prove that, perhaps not in this segment, but in the next segment. And it talks about, then it goes on to the fact that in terms of how the Prophet treated people in the prison of war, it said you must feed them, that do not kill women, children, the infirm and elderly, and so on. People are not participate in war, do not burn down trees, and all this is well known. The rules of warfare, the Islamic rules of warfare were instituted to prevent abuse. We were here for only one objective, and the objective is to spread justice and uproot the oppressors. Because we believe not in just conquering, getting wealth and so on. It's about being responsible. It's about being responsible for mankind. Martin Luther King said, Martin Luther King Jr. said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied to in a single garden of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Now, does possessing the methodology of warfare in one of your many audiences, does it make you a religion of war and not peace? What does Thomas Aquinas say in his Summa Theologica? Those who wage war justly aim at peace, and so they are not opposed to peace, except to evil peace, which our Lord came not to send upon the earth, referring to Matthew 10:34. This is Thomas Aquinas. Augustine, in his Epistle to Boniface, peace should be the object of your desire. War should be waged only as a necessity, and waged only that God may by it deliver men from necessity and preserve them in peace. For peace is not sought in order to the kindling of war, but war is waged in order that peace may be obtained. Therefore, even in waging war, cherish the spirit of the peacemaker, that by conquering those you attack, you may lead them to the advantages of peace. For our Lord says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. He's quoting us. If, however, peace among men be so sweet as procuring temporal safety, how much more is that peace with God that procures for men with the eternal felicity of the angels? Let necessity, therefore, and not your will, slay the enemy that fights you. And again, Paulo Freire says, washing one hands of the conflict between the powerful and the powerless means to side with the powerful and not be neutral. So, the issue is that if the Nazis exist, if you didn't fight against the Nazis, then they would oppress and they would massacre the Jews. My friend over here would not exist if people didn't fight against the oppressors and the people who were causing tyranny around the earth. And because in the situation where Islam came about, what governments were around it? You had oppressive feudalistic regimes, tyrannical regimes. If people say, oh, Islam was doing its jihad to convert people by the sword, was there any conversions? Was there forced conversions anywhere? I've got evidence. If the guy wants to bring it up, I'll bring up the evidences, and we'll see if there was really forced conversions. Why is there jizya? Why would they ask for a simple tax if the objective of Islam was to force convert people? People say, oh, they charge tax, the Muslims charge tax, very bad. Oh, really? Tax? Yes. What kind of evil regime would charge tax? Damn it. Right? the people of Dhimma, the word are the non-Muslims, and the Dhimma means those under contract. It comes from the original root meaning those who are sanctified or protected. They're under contract. If you have a problem with being called that term, then Rousseau called everyone here. We are all under contract. We are contractual citizens of the state. And that's what it was. Muslims don't expect you as non-Muslims, those in the audience, to fight for us or operate in our society. But interestingly enough, there was a tribe which fought and they weren't charged jizya. So I will jump to, is Islam a religion of peace? As Bernard the Wise, the pilgrim monk who visited Egypt and Palestine said during the reign of Caliph al-Mu'taz, he said, the Christians and the pagans, friends of Muslims, have this kind of peace between them that if I was going on a journey and on the way, the camel or donkey which pulled my luggage were to die and I was to abandon all my goods by any guardian and go to the city for another pack animal, when I came back I would find all my property uninjured there. Such is the peace there. And this is the peace that Islam will bring. Thank you.
Thanks, Abdullah. Are you ready to both mics?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out to this debate. It's a very interesting topic, and I'd like to thank Abdullah and Yahya for the opening presentation, for attempting to show us that Islam is a religion of peace. We thank them especially for presenting their view in a forum such as this. It's rare that we get to interact with these views. A lot of times people will bring up their views, but there's never really an opportunity to challenge them.
I'd just like to say here at the beginning that I really like Abdullah's version of Islam. If he writes his own tafsir, I will help you spread that tafsir. He comes out with his own footnotes to the Quran. I will help you spread that Quran. In the meantime, we are stuck with very different commentaries. Ibn Abbas, Ibn Kathir, we're stuck with different translations of the Quran. So I think we arrive at some different conclusions. But there are some points of formal agreement between us, some points where we agree with things that he has said. He said that modest dress is good. We have no objections to that. We agree completely, and that is something common to Islam and Christianity. He says whether Islam is violent or not is separate from whether it's true or not. And I agree completely. God could command violence if he wanted to. If he wanted a certain group judged, he could. The question is whether he has, whether Christianity is true or whether Islam is true. So if Islam is true, I'll just say, if Islam is true, I believe that some violence is required. He said that punishments aren't necessarily bad. I agree completely. I agree that we have prisons in the UK and in the United States to keep certain criminals separate from the rest of society. So we agree with all of these things, but it's on some of the other issues that we're going to have some disagreements about.
Well, you see, I kind of agreed with Abdullah when I was still a Muslim. I believed that Islam was very peaceful. That's the version of Islam I had been taught. That jihad was a jihad of the spirit and of the pen, not of the sword. That people were to live peacefully. Muhammad wouldn't hurt anyone unless they first declared war on Islam. That's what I believed. But as David said, I actually started reading the tafsir, I started reading the ahadith, and I realized that the history of Islam was entirely different. So then I started asking these questions. And recently, even as a Christian now, I ask these questions. I continually ask these questions. I went to a festival in Dearborn, Michigan a few weeks ago, and I asked the question there. Ironically enough, I was met with violence. And then a week later, I asked the same question at ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America's National Convention. Here, everyone was promoting peace. It was a very peaceful concept. Wherever you went, all the scholars who were there were saying Islam is peaceful. Islam is very peaceful. Now, I began to think, is there some level of contradiction here? In the Quran, in the Hadith, we find some peaceful passages, some violent passages. In the Seerah literature, we find a lot of violence. What do we see in real life today? Unfortunately, we see a lot of violence being committed in the name of Islam. Now, just because people are committing violence doesn't mean that that's part of Islam. That Muslims can take the word Islam in vain and then commit violence in its name, and it's not part of Islam. But it is pretty striking to see that these people are committing tons of violence. When I stopped yesterday, I said, well, let me just see how much violence has been committed in the name of Islam in this past week. Just since I've been here in London, since Wednesday, I realized that there were mass massacres, there were car bombings, church bombings, left and right, so much so that we had, in the past 5 days, 28 separate incidents reported in newspapers around the world, which showed 210 people dead and over 1,900 people wounded.
So the point is, we look to the world today and we see a violent Islam being proclaimed, we see a peaceful Islam being proclaimed. And interestingly, we find the same thing when we turn to the Quran. We turn to Surah 2:256. There is no compulsion in religion. That's peaceful. Then we turn to Surah 9:29. Fight those who believe not in Allah. We look at the closing passage of Surah 109. To you be your religion and to me be my religion. Very peaceful. Then we turn to Surah 9:5. When the sacred months are over, slay the infidels wherever you find them. So we find the peaceful and violent passages going all the way back to the beginning of Islam. The question is, how do we reconcile these? Are these simply contradictions, or is there a way to decide whether Muslims are called today to be peaceful or to be violent? That's the question before us.
And if you understand the way the Quran's revelation works, it's not necessary that in this case there is contradiction. In this very case, we have verses that say one thing and verses that say another thing, but do they contradict? Well, if you understand the doctrine of abrogation, you will understand that no, the verses don't necessarily contradict. Now, where do we find the concept of abrogation in the Quran? In chapter 2, verse 106 of the Quran, Allah says, whatever communications we cause to abrogate or cause to be forgotten, we bring one better than it or like it. In other words, we have some communications, we can cause them to be forgotten and bring ones better than it or like it. The Tafsir says, Tafsir al-Jalalain says, that this verse was revealed when the disbelievers began to deride the matter of abrogation, saying that one day Muhammad enjoins his companions to one thing, and the next day he forbids it. So people are making fun of Muhammad, saying, you said one thing the other day, and now you're saying something else. Then chapter 2, verse 106 comes. We see a Wahidi saying, Muhammad is mocking his companions. One day he commands them to do something, and the next day he forbids them from doing it, or brings instead something which is easier. He is nothing but a calumniator who says things of his own invention. In response to this claim that Wahidi records, chapter 16, verse 101 states, and when we change one communication for another communication, Allah knows best what He reveals. They say, you are only a forger. Nay, most of them do not know. So in these two sections of the Quran, we have statements which clearly state, hey, at one point we said one thing, now we can say something else. If only you had the understanding of Allah, you would know that it is a good thing. So these are the ways we can solve the issue. First, since Muhammad is the best interpreter of the Quran, we can see what role violence played in Muhammad's life. If he interprets the Quran the best through his life, let's see what role violence played in his life. Second, we can examine the Quran and Hadith to see if they clearly tell us what to do in cases of peace and violence.
All right, so let's begin by taking a look at the life of Muhammad and seeing what we can gather about violence in Islam. Muhammad believed that he was called to be a prophet around the year 610. For a while, he didn't preach openly, he preached in private. But after a while, he did begin preaching openly. He started telling the pagan tribes that their religion was false and that they were going to go to hell if they didn't believe in Allah. And eventually, the pagans started persecuting the Muslims. Now, almost every Muslim I run into looks at this period of history and says, how dare these people persecute Muhammad? How intolerant of these people. I'd like to review a few facts here. One, the Meccans were fine with Muhammad preaching Islam at the beginning, as long as he wasn't condemning everyone else's gods. It was very pluralistic. Muslims and pagans, they were fine until Muhammad started openly saying that their religion was false. So the source of the conflict here at the beginning was Muhammad criticizing the religion of others. Other than that, they would have been fine. Two, the first blood that was shed between the two groups was shed by a Muslim. Muslims and pagans got into a fight, and a Muslim named Sa'd picked up the jawbone of a camel and hit someone with it, and this was the first blood shed in the conflict between the Meccans and the Muslims. 3, even in Mecca, Muslims began responding violently when people criticized Muhammad. When Muhammad's relative Hamza heard that Abu Jahl had insulted Muhammad, he hit Abu Jahl with a bow and said, "Will you insult him when I follow his religion?" And say what he says, "Hit me if you can." 4, even in Mecca, Muhammad was planning to conquer Arabia. When the Meccans came to Abu Talib to talk to him about Muhammad, they said, "You know the trouble that exists between us and your nephew. So call him and let us make an agreement that he will leave us alone and we will leave him alone. Let him have his religion and we will have ours." They were trying to arrive at a peaceful solution. Muhammad responded, "You may give me one word by which you shall rule the Arabs and subject the Persians to you." He said that if they recite the Shahada, they would rule over the Arabs and the Persians. So even in Mecca, when it's just a small group of Muslims, the idea is once we get everything together, we're going to go conquer the Persians, conquer the entire Arabian Peninsula. 5, Muhammad preached against the religious beliefs of the people of Mecca for 10 years, and he survived. Would I last 10 years if I preached against the religion of the people of Mecca today? If I went to Mecca today and started openly criticizing the religious beliefs of the inhabitants of Mecca, would I make it 10 years? Would I make it 10 months? 10 days? If I stood outside the Kaaba like the Muslims were doing, condemning the religion of the people there, would I last 10 minutes? I don't believe I would.
10 seconds.
And Muslims condemn the pagans for their intolerance when they allowed Muhammad to do this for 10 years. 6, when Muhammad was still in Mecca, he walked into the Kaaba one day, walked around it, and then walked up to the people of Mecca and said, "Verily, O Qureshi, I bring you slaughter." He announced to the people while he was still there that he was going to bring them slaughter. 7, when the Meccans tried to kill Muhammad, oh look, they tried to kill Muhammad, how intolerant. Why did they try to kill Muhammad? Well, he had already announced to them that he was going to bring them slaughter. When we read in Ibn Asad, when the Qureshi saw that the apostle had a party and companions not of their tribe and outside their territory, and that his companions had migrated to join them and knew that they had settled in a new home and had gained new protectors, they feared that the apostle might join them, since they knew that he had decided to fight them. Muhammad announces that he's going to slaughter people. He goes and starts building alliances with other tribes, and he decides he's going to move out of Mecca. The Meccans say, "He's going to fight us." And they even tried to come up with it. They thought of confining him. They said, "No, if we confine him, all these people are just going to attack us." And so they decided to kill. Now, in all of the history, in those 10 years, 2 people were killed. 2 Muslims were killed. People were tortured. People were persecuted. I don't agree with persecution. I don't agree with killing anyone. But it's important to keep in mind the distinction here. When the Meccans were in control, things didn't go as nearly as bad as they did for the pagans later on when Muslims were in control, or the Jews when Muslims were in control. So we have a very different picture here.
So the pagans did persecute the Muslims, not too poorly. Yes, 2 people died, that's horrible. 13 other people were injured. That's over a course of the whole time Islam was in Mecca before going to Medina. 15 total people, according to the records. And, well, at the end of this, when Muhammad had a chance to leave, we know that the tribal leaders sent men to kill Muhammad the very last night before he flew to Medina. That time that he had when he was leaving, this was his opportunity to start a period of peace. Finally, he's no longer being persecuted. Finally, he can go to Medina and live in peace. Finally, he has a chance to show what Islam is really made of, if it is the religion of peace. But what happened? Muhammad leaves, he goes to Medina, and immediately he starts planning on how to raid caravans. Now, as Muhammad gets there, he notices one thing, and that is that when people send caravans out from Mecca, they invest their funds into it, and when these funds come back after having done their trading in far-off places, then people will receive the money, and that's the money off which they will live. So Muhammad knows that if attacking these caravans is successful, he's cutting off the lifeblood of the Meccans. So he plans an attack. He doesn't lead it himself, he plans one. He sends people out, it fails. They come back, he sends them out again later. They shoot arrows this time, but it fails, they come back again. A third attack happens, it fails as well. Now Muhammad says, I'm in charge, let's go together. Muhammad goes for a fourth raid, it fails. A fifth raid, it fails. The sixth raid fails. Now it's the seventh raid. And in the seventh raid, we find ourselves in the holy month which all the people of Saudi Arabia subscribe to. No one would ever believe that someone would dare attack anyone during the holy month. Muhammad, again, has sent his people out. The first person who's in line for this fight has shaved his head as part of the symbolism of subscribing to the holy month. So he looks like a pilgrim. He doesn't look like a warrior at all. The caravan sees this, and they say, well, this man is just a pilgrim. They don't fear him. Well, this was just part of the trap. The Muslims then attacked the caravan during the holy month. A man was killed. And this is the initiation of battles in Islam. This is how Badr then later happened. Then we see, after that, the battles of Uhud, the battle of the Trench, we see the battle of Khaybar. We see all sorts of battles happening from then on out. So when Muhammad finally had a chance to start peace, what do we know? He initiated battles that became never-ending during his lifetime.
So if we turn to the life of Muhammad, we see that when Muhammad was outnumbered in Mecca, the call was to peace. Later on, when Muhammad had an army around him, there was non-stop fighting until he died. So as far as the life of Muhammad is concerned, it would seem that the final marching orders of Muhammad are to fight. Now, if we turn to the Quran, we can confirm this. We can confirm this through the Quran and through Muslim commentators. Muslims in the West are quick to point to passages like Surah 2:256. There is no compulsion in religion, as if this and a couple other peaceful passages in the Quran somehow provide the Muslims with their final marching orders. What they don't tell us is that, according to Muslim commentators, this verse has been abrogated. It was canceled by verses that came later. Ibn Kathir, considered by many Muslims to be the greatest Quranic commentator of all time, says that 2:256 was abrogated by verses like 973, 9:123, and 48:16, which call for fighting. Ibn Kathir says, therefore all people of the world should be called to Islam. If any one of them refuses to do so, or refuses to pay the jizya, they should be fought till they are killed. This is everyone is to be called and then fought until they're killed or until they pay the jizya. Surah 9:29 says this, fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and His Messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, from among the people of the book, Christians and Jews, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. Notice what this says. It doesn't say, fight the oppressors. It doesn't say, fight people who are attacking you. It says, fight those who do not believe. These are people who have different beliefs from you, therefore you attack them.
And the next verse makes that clear, by the way.
Oh yes, Surah 9:30. That's where, according to Ibn Kathir, the reason for fighting the Jews and Christians is given. So the answer is found, and the Jews say Uzair is the son of Allah, and Christians say the Messiah is the son of Allah. These are the words of the mouths. They imitate the saying of those who disbelieved before. May Allah destroy them, how they are turned away. Ibn Kathir says, fighting the Jews and Christians is legislated because they are idolaters and disbelievers. Allah encourages the believers to fight the disbelieving Jews and Christians who uttered this terrible statement and other lies against Allah the Exalted. As for the misguidance of Christians over Isa, it is obvious. So why fight us? Because we're attacking? No, because we say Jesus is Lord.
Is this us saying this? Absolutely not. It's a verse from the Quran being interpreted by one of the greatest commentators of Islamic history, Ibn Kathir.
Now, so Muslims are clearly called to fight, but it's clear that Muslims didn't always fight. So when are Muslims allowed to seek peace? According to Surah 3:28, if Muslims feel threatened by a stronger adversary, they're allowed to pretend to be friendly for a time. As Ibn Kathir says, in this case, such believers are allowed to show friendship outwardly, but never inwardly. One of Muhammad's companions, Abu Darda, put it this way, we smile in the face of some people, though our hearts curse them. So if you're outnumbered in Mecca, or if you're outnumbered in a Western society where Islam is not the dominant religion, you pretend to be peaceful. But what if Muslims are in a position of power? Well, then the ruling changes. We read in Surah 47:35, be not weary and faint-hearted, crying for peace when you should be uppermost. According to Ibn Kathir again, this means that Muslims shouldn't compromise, seek peace, or end fighting with non-Muslims when Muslims are in a position of power. Well, Ibn Kathir, when are Muslims, again, allowed to be peaceful? He tells us, if the disbelievers are considered more powerful and numerous than the Muslims, then the Imam may decide to hold a treaty if he judges that it entails a benefit for Muslims. Are you noticing a pattern here? If Muslims are strong, they're told to fight everyone. If they're weak, they're told to pretend to be friendly and to seek a temporary peace while they build up enough strength to attack. Is this a religion of peace? This is a religion that pretends to be peaceful, so long as people aren't strong enough to conquer.
Now, I noticed some people in the audience are shaking their heads, and I can understand that because I was in your shoes once. Maybe David and I are interpreting things entirely incorrectly. Maybe we're looking at the Quran, and since we're not Muslims, we are misinterpreting everything. Well, I think what I've been told from day one, when I don't understand the Quran, I should turn to Hadith. I should see from the Hadith what we find. Does the life of Muhammad, as shared by Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim, corroborate that which I'm saying, or does it show an opposite opinion? Well, let me show you from Sahih Bukhari, starting from Sahih Bukhari, verse number 6924. I have been ordered to fight the people till they say, none has the right to be worshipped but Allah. And whoever says, La ilaha illallah, Allah will save his property and his life from me. So I've been ordered to fight people until they say La ilaha illallah. That's 6924. Sahih Muslim number 30. I have been commanded to fight against people so long as they do not declare La ilaha illallah. But are these solitary occasions? Is this just something in general, or is fighting in Islam not an afterthought? Is it something that's prescribed to people as main, a core of the religion? If we look at Sahih Bukhari number 2785, a man came to Allah's messenger and said, guide me to such a deed as equals jihad. And Muhammad said, I find no such deed. In 2796, the Prophet said, a single endeavor of fighting in Allah's cause in the afternoon or the forenoon is worth more than the entire world and whatever is in it. Fighting worth more than the world and whatever is in it. 2795, the Prophet said, nobody who dies and finds good with Allah would wish to come back to this world, even if you were given the whole world and whatever is in it, except the martyr, who, upon seeing the superiority of martyrdom, would wish to come back to this world and die again. So, what I'm seeing here is, it doesn't seem to be that fighting is just an afterthought or a supporting issue. It's a matter of the very core. It's better than everything there is. There's no better deed than fighting. And dying for Allah's cause is not just something Muhammad is saying abstractly. This is not a metaphorical concept. In fact, Muhammad makes extremely clear, even about himself. He says in Sahih Bukhari number 2797, by him in whose hand my soul is, I would love to be martyred in Allah's cause, and then come back to life, and then get martyred, and come back to life, and get martyred, and come back to life, and get martyred. So Muhammad is not saying this in some sort of metaphorical sense. He's saying, I would love to fight and die, and fight and die, and fight and die.
So we've looked at the life of Muhammad, and we see a clear progression towards violence. We've looked at Quranic passages, and when we look at the commentators, the peaceful passages are the earlier passages, and Muhammad's final marching orders, by the way, Surah 9, where we find the command to fight those who do not believe, is either the last or next to last surah revealed. These are Muhammad's final marching orders. So the Quran agrees with us. When we turn to Islam's greatest commentators, we find that the peaceful passages have been abrogated and that Muhammad's final marching orders were to fight everyone. And when we turn to the Hadith, we find that Muhammad was commanded to fight people until they recite the Shahada. Everything is in agreement on this issue. And yet, our friends disagree with us. Our Muslim friends, Abdullah and Yahya, disagree with us. Abdullah says, what is peace? He gave several different definitions. And I would agree that a religion can be peaceful in various ways. For instance, he says that a religion can provide mental peace. I don't have any objections there. I do have an objection that you provide mental peace by giving a simple theology. The simplest theology is atheism. So I don't necessarily think that makes it the most peaceful mentally. He says that Islam does not seek to humiliate people. Well, again, the commentators would disagree. Asyuti, he gives several definitions of what the Muslims were to do to the dhimmis, how these dhimmis were to be treated. Ibn Abbas says that state of abasement, when it says that we are to be in a state of abasement, means that we are pushed. They push us around. Ibn Abi Hatim transmitted that. It is transmitted that Al-Mughira told Rostam, I call you to Islam or else you must pay the jizya while you are in a state of abasement. He said, I know what jizya means, but what does a state of abasement mean? He replied, you pay it while you are standing and I am sitting and the whip is hanging over your head. Abu Shaykh related that Sa'id ibn Musaib said, I prefer that the people of the Dimma become tired by paying the jizya, since he says, until they pay the jizya with their own hands in a state of complete abasement. It is used as proof by those who say that it is taken in a humiliating way, and so the taker sits and the dhimmi stands with his head bowed and his back bent. The jizya is placed in the balance and the taker seizes his beard and hits his chin. This is how dhimmis were to be treated. We're to come to you crawling on all fours, you're to grab us by our beards, wouldn't work with me, and then hit us in our chins. This is not supposed to be humiliating, but this is what Islam's greatest commentators say. This is what we find from Ibn Abbas and As-Suyuti.
And why are they saying this? Because of the verse in the Quran, 929, where it says, they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. So it's not commentators coming up with things. This is coming from their interpretation of the Quran. No, I have some responses. Abdullah also mentioned a quotation from me from while I was in ISNA. That was a week ago, and I posted a comment based on what I was seeing and the problems of preaching a peaceful Islam in light of the fact that all of the early history says something different. As part of that quotation, as part of that response, I believe it was part of the response, I could be wrong, he quotes a verse where he says, oppression is worse than slaughter. That is a verse from the Quran, chapter 2, verse 217. Let me give you the whole verse. He didn't quote the whole verse. The whole verse says, they asked thee concerning fighting in the prohibited month, i.e., they're asking you about fighting during the sacred month. Say, fighting therein is a grave offense, but graver is it in the sight of Allah to prevent access to the path of Allah, to deny Him, to prevent access to the sacred mosque, and drive out its members. Tumult and oppression are worse than slaughter. So what was the context of that? The context was, it's okay for you to kill someone during the holy month. That was revealed right after the Nakhla raid that I had mentioned, which was the start of the series of battles that Muhammad induced.
One more point on, Abdullah pointed out that the jizya was a simple tax, and it's okay because, everyone pays taxes. Let me read one passage for you. Sahih al-Bukhari, number 2338. Umar expelled the Jews and Christians from Hijaz. When the messenger had conquered Khaybar, he wanted to expel the Jews from it as its land became the property of Allah, His messenger, and the Muslims. Allah's messenger intended to expel the Jews, but they requested to let them stay there on condition that they would do the labor and get half the fruits. What was the jizya there? They had to pay half of everything they produced on their land. Is that a simple tax? That's quite a bit, and when we look at various sources, we can see how much. There was no set dhimmi tax. It's whatever people could get out of people without them rioting or something. And in many cases, we find 25%, 50%, and so on. This is in Sahih al-Bukhari.
So we only have 3.5 minutes left. I'd like to briefly mention the fact that violence, as we see it in Islam, is not just directed towards unbelievers. So far, we've been talking about unbelievers, but it's also directed towards many other people, and it seems that in many cases the solution to problems is just simply violence. When it comes to apostates, if we look in Sahih Bukhari, number 6921, it says female apostates should be killed. 6922 says that anyone who leaves Islam must be killed. 6923 says that Muhammad ordered apostates to be killed. 6924, as you recall, this was 4 in a row. 6924 said, I've been ordered to fight the people till they say La ilaha illallah. What about 6930? It says Muslims who kill apostates will have a reward on the day of resurrection.
I don't think I could ever have mental peace in an area where I'm not free to believe whatever I want about God. We don't just see this with regard to apostates. We see the same thing with regard to critics. Again, even when Muhammad was in Mecca, his followers would respond violently when Muhammad was criticized. When they actually had more power, this became more severe. So we see Abu Afaq, a man who was more than 100 years old, being killed brutally for criticizing Islam. Asma, when she saw this, when she saw what Muslims did to this man, she wrote a poem inviting people to stand up against Muhammad. She was brutally killed for this. We see over and over again people being killed for criticizing Muhammad. Now think about this. Muhammad was free to say anything he wanted about any of the pagans, any of their gods, any of their forefathers, anything he wanted, and You're horrible and intolerant if you react to that. But you say one word against Muhammad and you deserve death. Why the inconsistency?
I'd also like to point out that and this is a very sore topic for many people, and we don't have too much time left anyway, but I do want to open it up for discussion in case it comes up in the rest of this debate. Violence towards women is not something that's unheard of in Islam by any means. We have chapter 4, verse 34 of the Quran, which of course says, if you fear disobedience on their part, first leave them alone in their sleeping places, then, did I say that wrong? First admonish them, then leave them alone in their sleeping places, and finally beat them. There's various interpretations of this. If you want to discuss it, we can.
Read the whole verse.
And if they desist from disobedience, then you have nothing to hold against them, sure. But hitting is permitted. I heard at the last conference I was at, Islam, that it is a mutawatir hadith that Muhammad never hit any woman in his whole life, and we should use his example. Well, I approached the sheikh who said that, and I said, could you please explain to me, say Muslim number 2127, where Muhammad hit Aisha, causing her pain. He looked at me and said, I did not know of such a hadith, which is there, Sahih Muslim 2127. So we can discuss this if need be. I think it's time for me to wrap up. There's 30 seconds left, and I would like to simply say this. I hope David and I are wrong. I hope our interpretation of Islam is entirely false. I hope we can lose this debate tonight. The fact of the matter is, we don't think so, and that's why we're here tonight. But if Abdullah and Yahya can show us that Islam is peaceful, we will be thankful, and that's hopefully what will happen. If not, though, I would like you all to reconsider what you think about Islam, whether it is actually the religion of peace.
Right, we now got 2 rebuttals. This will be for 15 minutes each, and then you'll be relieved to know we have a break. So firstly, people on my right, and then 15 minutes, and then after that, people on my left. Thank you.
Well, obviously, when someone brings up in 30 minutes a whole bunch of points, there's not you need to take. It's easy to say, right? Let's say with the women are oppressed in Islam. That just takes a few seconds to explain it, and that's not the case. It takes minutes. So I'm going to answer as quickly as I can all those points as best I can. We're glad you like our Islam, but it's called classical Islam. Try investigating some time. Nabeel said that he came from this background, like in the same background as living jihad. As a Qadiani, you believe in jihad as a pen. In fact, that's one of the main differences between Islam and Qadianism. They don't make
all apparently conserve in the US literally at the same time.
Yeah, well, no, that's a shame. Anyway, so the other point: how much violence did they commit in the name of Islam in the past week? How many people have Christians killed in the past week in Afghanistan, Pakistan, around Iraq, and so on? How many? And you might say they're not practicing Christians. Well, then allow us to retort with the same response. Right. When it comes to, they said that how Muslims we're not peaceful because look at these verses. They say that we go to attack and so on. I said, as individuals, we are peaceful. We can't. Much like the Christian theology. As individuals, you have to be peaceful. But if the ruler gives you marching orders, you have to go. Unlike Christianity, we can say no if the ruler says it's an unjust war. But Christian scholars are still divided this very day as to whether you have to still obey the ruler, even if he commands you to do injustice and to attack other countries and so on. And I can bring Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, Calvin, and Martin Luther to bear on this one. And unless they know nothing about Islam, those 4 guys, enough about Christianity rather, they know nothing about Christianity, then fine. But they seem to be quite good authorities in religion, so I've heard. Anyway, as for abrogation, Surah 9:29, where it says, fight those who disbelieve on the last day, nor hold what Allah has held forbidden. Interesting enough, they pass along that, nor hold forbidden what Allah has held forbidden. One of the conditions of peace between the Prophet Muhammad and the Najrani tribe was that they don't do interest. They don't use interest. They don't use interest banking, whatever, which is unoppressive. It's an unjust system. And it has been prohibited, interest is prohibited. And remember I said in another verse, Allah has declared war, and His Messenger has declared war on those people who do interest, who practice interest. For all our sake, because it's an unjust system. So those who do not hold what Allah has held forbidden, and if you read all the verses, if you read verses before that and other verses where it said those who rule by Allah than what God has revealed, they are the oppressors. You see? So it's all in context. Oppressors, it is oppression. If you rule with
with other than what we call capitalism, communism, it's oppressive systems. Communism is oppressive, and we call that other than what God has revealed. God is a problem with that. And Christianity, with the Christians that were practicing in those times, there was no Christian law. There is no Christian law today being applied anywhere. So again, you still fall short of following the own revelation God gave you. You have to implement it. But anyway, so abrogation, there's no abrogation on this one. It's addition, as in another verse comes down and it adds to it, because all the other verses Muslims still use. There's still historical doctrine. We all use it. The prophets still used it. The companions still used these other verses. We talked about defense. We talked about offense. They all used it. They still used it. There was no abrogation. Where did they get this idea from? I don't know. Source of conflict. You know, the source of conflict was Muhammad's criticism. Really? That's like saying that to Christians, essentially, that the source of conflict was Jesus in Israel. Damn it! He got crucified for his own fault because he criticized the Pharisees. Bad Jesus. No. I believe what Jesus did and what Prophet did, what Prophet Muhammad did, is righteous and just. So if you're going to condemn the Prophet Muhammad for this, you're going to condemn Jesus as well. Sorry. As for the issue of someone being killed with jawbone of a camel, sounds like something in the Old Testament. I haven't heard of that in Islam.
You as a source for that, David.
Yeah.
Which one?
Jawbone of a camel.
Sounds a bit like Samson in the Old Testament to me.
Yeah. Anyway, as for as for Hamza hitting someone with a bow, this was before Hamza became Muslim, and he saw someone abusing the Prophet Muhammad, and he hit someone, saying, "What are you acting like a coward for?" Essentially. That was before he became Muslim. So we're held to account for those who aren't Muslim yet. Right, fine. Prophecy, he said, the Prophet Muhammad prophesied they conquered the Persians and Romans. Well, doesn't this sound like a prophet, really? It actually will happen. I think, are you arguing against or for Islam? I don't know. I mean, you say that Prophet Muhammad was successful in one of the prophecies he gave, that they will conquer, when there was only 5 Muslims in the whole world, that he prophesied that the Muslims will conquer the Romans and Persians, who were a mighty empire at that time. I think that's a sign of his prophethood. Not a sign that refutes him, but thanks for bringing it up. As for, he preached 10 years and survived. Wow. 10 years. Yeah, he preached 10 years and survived. You know, interesting thing is this, yeah? What kind of society was it? Was it like a society where, you know, you had centralized government and you had obviously a police force and so on? Was that the kind of society it was? These people are very anachronistic. It was a tribal society. Abu Talib's tribe was protecting Prophet Muhammad. If anyone killed Prophet Muhammad, there would be a blood feud that would kill loads of people, and they were scared of this. Until they came up, they had a plan that if all the other tribes were pagan, if we all do it together at the same time, the Abu Talib's tribe can't attack us. So we can all get away with it. When they came up with that plan, they decided to strike the Prophet Muhammad, but he had left by that time. Why doesn't Nabeel not know this? Very interesting. Curious. Anyway, then he said that the Prophet Muhammad declared to the Qureshi, "I bring you slaughter." According to the Hadith scholars, classical and modern, it's fabricated, so they should know this. If you check your research, or I can bring up the Gospel of Barnabas if you want. And so that's authentic as well, yeah? Right. They said two people were killed in 10 years. Well, the Quran says, like my Jewish friend also agreed, also in his sources, if you kill one person, it is if you kill all humanity. So I'm sorry. That's not acceptable. Only 2 people died. It's okay. It's only human beings. You can kill them, isn't it? No. Caravan raiding. Interesting thing about caravan raiding. The caravan that was raided, the Qureshi caravan, what was on that caravan? What was on the caravan? On the caravan the Qureshi, that was Muslims raiding this caravan. Yeah, what was it? It was the properties that were stolen from the Muslims, the people that still remained behind, it was stolen from the Muslims, and put on that caravan, they were brutalized, all their possessions taken, put on that caravan to make money for the people that had taken it from them. What, is it wrong to take it back? Oh, I'm sorry. Right. As they said that Prophet Muhammad started the war with the Qureshi, according to Nabeel book by al-Andalusi and Mani, it said that the cause that led to the Battle of Badr, all battles fought between the Prophet Muhammad and the infidels of Arabia, was as stated by Urwa bin Zubair, the death of Amr Haydram, who was slain, he was killed by Qureshi Abu Bakr ibn Abdullah Tamimi. Do some research. I'm going to give you this book like that. Yeah, I'll tell you the name of this book or all the books like it afterwards. So some research, please. Sorry?
Yes, she owns.
Yeah, she owns that book.
Yeah.
There's no excuse then. No, I used it. Right. He said, fight those who do not disbelieve. They kept bringing up, fight those who do not disbelieve. That's what it says. Fight those who do not disbelieve. Right. Yes. Fine. Okay. As Muslims, obviously, we're not going to, in terms of spreading Islam, let's say if you're a communist, right, there's no point in invading the Soviet Union, is it? Because all the communists are there. It's like, we must invade all the communists to spread communism. Not going to work. Yeah, or America said we must invade all the democracies to control unemployment. Anyway, but everyone knows about South America. Anyway, long story. But it doesn't make sense. Obviously, the Quran's going to say Muslims are going to fight against those who don't believe in Islam and are not implementing the law system, a just law system. So of course we're going to fight. But they said, oh, but it's because of belief. We're fighting because of belief. If that was the case, we would force them to be Muslim. But they never were forced to be Muslim. Well, yeah, I mean, the fact that there are Egyptian Christians, Coptics, Assyrian Church,
Jews.
there are so many denominations in the Middle East to this very day with the oldest churches in the world. What, did the Muslims just forget? Just like when they pass by the church, it goes, that's a funny mosque. Sorry, it doesn't make sense, no. We only show friendship outwardly and we pretend to be peaceful. This is very interesting that they say this. Because the verse of the Quran which says, do not take the Jews and Christians as your allies and protectors. It means do not take them as your patrons. If you're going to establish an Islamic system, a Sharia, you're not going to have a Christian who's ruling it because he doesn't believe in it. It's like having, have a communist system and have a capitalist ruling it. It doesn't make sense because he doesn't believe in it. Why are you going to make him the ruler? Why are you going to make the capitalist or the communist protectors of each other when they have different ideology? They don't agree with each other. Why should they? This is why we said the Christians and Muslims and Jews are left alone. They're left alone. Autonomy, they can have their own laws if they want, and they do. Sometimes they make the Sharia courts better laws. And that's it. We don't expect them to be under our system. But very interesting enough, though, it's very interesting in 2 Corinthians 6:14, I can say the same about Christians. It says, do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? What harmony is there between Christ and Belial, the pagan god? What does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? What agreement is there between the temple of God and idols? For we are the temple of the living God, and as God said, I will live with them and walk among them. I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore come out from them and be separate, says the Lord. Touch not unclean things, I will receive you. I'll be the father of you, and so on and so forth. So I could say that the Christians too can't be friends with Muslims or any non-Christian, and so on. And yes, people shake their heads, but also Muslims are shaking their heads when they're trying to twist our sources. So at least you have to try to understand this. Try to understand this. Our frustration when they try to misquote us. Yeah. As for it says, jihad is given praise. Yes, martyrdom is given praise. So sacrificing the life of God is given praise. And it's sacrificing your life for God. Yeah? How many of you would actually have the bravery to sacrifice your life for God? Ask yourselves this question. Ask yourself this question before you question other people. I say, do not find a splint in the brother's eye. You'll see the log in yours, yeah? As for atheism, say, well, about theology or about the belief, atheism is the most simplest. Yeah, but I also said it has to be consistent. An atheist is a contradiction because they can't answer which cause the finite, limited, and contingent universe which we live in. The universe has to be as a cause. And if they don't answer this question, so their theology or their lack of is inconsistent and irrational. That's my point. With Islam, belief in one God, He creates everything, He's indivisible, infinite. What's wrong with that? Any contentions? I wouldn't say contention. On Saturday evening, we're going to have this debate as well, so please be there. It'll be very interesting. He also says state of abasement. The people who are in a state of, the dhimmis are in a state of abasement. And he quoted Ibn Abbas. Now, it is known that the person who quoted from Ibn Abbas, Tanwir al-Miqbas, is almost unanimously known not to be from Ibn Abbas. Yes, Tafsir ascribed to him, and it's a fake one. So again, check your sources, please. But let's say, what did the Prophet Muhammad, what did he really say, according to the hadiths from the Sahih Sittah, the 7 hadith books, the collection of hadith and so on. Prophet Muhammad said, whoever's harmed the dhimmi has harmed me. How much do we love the Prophet Muhammad? We will never tolerate a non-Muslim citizen of an Islamic state being harmed. Prophet Muhammad said, when he saw some dhimmis were being forced to pay jizya and they didn't have anything, he said to the people doing it, stop doing it. He said, do not torture the people, for whoever tortures them in this world, Allah will punish them, or they'll be punished by Allah on their judgment. The Prophet Muhammad also said, whoever oppresses a person under covenant, a dhimmi, a representative person, or oppresses him, or imposes on him something more than he can afford, or humiliates him, or takes anything from him without his consent, I will oppose him on the day of judgment. And as Al-Kharafi, the classical Muslim scholar, Maliki scholar said, and this is agreed by all schools, gentleness towards the weak, to deal with the dhimmis here, how we should act with them, we should be gentleness, show gentleness towards their weak, providing clothing for them and soft speech. This must be done with affection and mercy, not intimidation or degradation. Furthermore, tolerating the fact that they must be bothersome neighbors whom you could force to move, but you do not do so out of kindness towards them, not out of fear or financial reasons. Also, praying that they receive guidance and thus join the ranks of the Muslims, advising them in all the worldly and spiritual matters, protecting their reputation if they are exposed to slander, defending their property, family, rights, concerns, assisting them against oppression, and getting them their rights. These are all the obligations Muslims have to non-Muslim citizens. It's more than people do here. It's more than people do in this country. Bloody hell. Right.
1 minute.
Thank you. Now, he mentioned apostasy and wife beating. I can't get to that because there's limited time. Well, suffice to say, apostasy is also law in the Old Testament. If you condemn that, I want you to condemn the spirit that tells people to kill people for apostasy. I want you to condemn this. If you condemn this, I accept it. If you don't, sorry? Yeah, I want you to condone it, in fact. Condone it. Condone this thing, that this thing has come from God. Maybe not Islam, but at some point in your Testament, we know this. As for wife beating, the verse, the hadith does not say that Aisha was beaten by her husband. The dalabar implies a tap. It's not even dalabar, sorry. It's not even dalabar, it implies tap. The word that she used was, she was tapped. And it was, it means she was struck down. This is silly, please. This is silly, and please research the Arabic and the sources before you try to find any nitty-gritty thing you can, because some people are so desperate to attack Islam, they try to find anything. So please, check the sources, otherwise you're only going to humiliate yourself when you bring up a debate like this. Yeah, and please source everything you say about the Prophet Muhammad in future. I think I answered all their points as quickly as I can. I'm really sorry, people, that I can't deal with the rest of the stuff, but maybe my next segment will deal with it. Thank you.
Okay, we now invite our American friends to give their 15-minute rebuttal, after which time there will be a 15-minute break. Thank you. Yes, please. Yeah.
All right, that was an excellent presentation on his behalf. He hit a lot of what we said, and I certainly appreciate that. A lot of times when we debate, people just want you to respond to what we say, they'll go off on their own subject. So, well, I really appreciate that you actually listened to what we said and provided a good response to it. I don't think, however, that it was an effective response. So let me start off by talking about the concept of abrogation. He said that chapter 2, verse 256 was not abrogated by these later statements in the Quran, such as 9.5, 9.29, etc. Fact of the matter is that his own scholars are against him on this issue. And when I say scholars, I'm not talking about random people, I'm talking about some really good scholars. For example, Ibn Kathir says that it was abrogated. I can quote Ibn Juzay, who said to abrogated every peace treaty ever mentioned in the Quran. As-Suyuti says the ayat of the sword, in other words, 9.5, abrogates pardon, truce, and overlooking. So we have multiple people who comment on this saying that it was abrogated. This is not Nabeel Qureshi's tafsir. This is other people's tafsir. And I did check my sources. I wish you would stop accusing us as if we did not. I can also talk about chapter 9, verse 29. You said, the problem here is that they don't hold that which is forbidden. That's simply not the case. It does say, fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold forbidden that which hath been forbidden. But what they're doing is explaining those people who are to be fought. The normal forbidden, that which has been forbidden, is another modifier of the people who are to be fought, and it says very clearly at the end exactly who they're talking about from among the people of the book. The next verse tells us clearly the reason why. The reason wasn't part of the modifiers. The modifiers is explaining who. The reason why is in the next verse, where it says the Jews call Hosea the Son of God, and the Christians call Christ the Son of God. Allah's curse be on them. So the issue of why they're to be fought is explicit, because Allah's curse is on them because they called certain people sons of God. It's for their beliefs.
And notice something here. We didn't just quote Quran passages. We're misrepresenting all these Quran passages. We quoted your greatest commentators who agree with us on these issues.
And actually, the reason why we have those beliefs is because the commentator said so in the first place. Before we move on, can I just briefly also mention his reference to chapter 5, verse 32 of the Quran? He didn't actually mention the number of the verse, but the verse which says, if we kill one person, it says, if we killed everyone. That's chapter 5, verse 32 of the Quran, commonly used by Muslims to show that Islam is peaceful. However, if you read it in context, it says, we ordained for the children of Israel that if anyone slew a person, unless it be for murder or for spreading mischief in the land, it would be as if he slew the whole people. So that's for the children of Israel. The next verse tells us how we're supposed to relate this to Muhammad and Allah. The next verse says, the punishment of those who wage war against Allah and His Messenger and strive with might and main for mischief to the land is execution, or crucifixion, or the cutting off of hands and feet from opposite sides, or exile from the land. Notice, the verse he's using to show you can't kill anyone is not applying to Muslims. The verse that does apply to Muslims says kill them, execute them if they provide mischief against Muhammad and wage war.
And by the way, go to some tafsir collections and look up what it means to be a mischief maker. It means to spread unbelief. Very dangerous ground, and this is what you'd be killed for. Now, I hope I misinterpreted. I really, really hope that I misinterpreted what Abdullah says. He says, yes, of course we fight people. We fight the oppressors. And then he described Western financial systems as oppressive systems. So does that mean he is called to fight the West because of our oppressive systems and the oppression? I hope not, but I hope he'll clarify that for us. He says he can point to violence in Christianity. Well, we will be dealing with this issue completely on Thursday, but notice what we weren't saying. We weren't saying, hey, look, Muslims have committed violence in the world today, therefore Islam is violent. What did we say? We said Islam. We have peaceful Muslims and we have Muslims committing violence. We said that was to set up the issue, who's right here? And then we went to the sources to show who's right. So if you can show from the Christian sources that we're called to violence, please do so on Thursday. Now regarding the Meccan period, they asked for the source on Sa'd shedding the first blood, that's Ibn Ishaq. He says that Hamza wasn't a Muslim yet. I read the passage to you. Will you, after he goes in and hits Abu Jahl with his bow, he says, will you insult him, Muhammad, when I follow his religion? That sounds like a Muslim to me. He says Muhammad said he would conquer Arabia and Mecca, therefore he's a true prophet. Well, come on, Alexander the Great said he was going to conquer a lot too. That makes Alexander the Great a prophet. No, it shows that Muhammad was set on conquering, even in the Meccan period when he was proclaiming that his religion is peaceful. Regarding Muhammad surviving for 10 years, he pointed out that Abu Talib's tribe protected Muhammad. Abu Talib died in 619, and that's when the people of Mecca picked up the persecution. But notice, 619, Muslims left in 622. Muhammad was still there for 3 years. Yes, they persecuted. Yes, there was killing. Yes, these things are bad. But again, my point was, this is absolutely nothing compared to what people endured under the Muslim rule. Regarding Ibn Ishaq, I bring you slaughter. This is found in Ibn Ishaq and al-Tabari. They say it's fabricated. Notice, this is your earliest detailed biographical source that we have. I think al-Tabari is your best detailed biographical source that comes after Ibn Ishaq. They both grant this, and they throw them out. Well, if you're going to throw out these passages, guess what? By the time you get a century away from Muhammad, history has already been corrupted. How do Muslims know about Muhammad? They go to sources more than 2 centuries after the time of Muhammad. If by the time you get to a century away from Muhammad, your sources have been corrupted, don't tell me you know anything about your prophet. So either treat your historians as reliable, or admit that you don't know a lot about Muhammad historically. Take your pick, I'll allow either one. Do you want to go on to...
Sure, I'll mention how he briefly talked about the Nabeel saying that the Muslims were taking their property back. Please show me a source that says that. If you show me that, then I will include that in my statements in the future. However, I don't think there is such a source. You do, even when you say that, even when you say the Muslims will just get the talking back, guess what you have still conceded? You have still conceded that the Muslims initiated the attacks during the holy month, killing a person during that time. And if it's for property, then I think that's even worse. Then you talk about Badr and you say, well, it was the Meccans who came and attacked. The Battle of Badr was the Meccans' fault. No, what happened in Badr was the Meccans realized, oh my goodness, these people are willing to attack during the holy month. Next time we send out a caravan, we're going to send a convoy with it to defend it. The Muslims came out for another raid. That's why there weren't so many Muslims there. There was only 313 Muslims total for the Battle of Badr. They go out to attack this caravan. They see an entire army ready to fight in case they need to defend this caravan. That's why the Muslims in the Meccan army were not fighting near Medina. They were fighting out in the middle because the Muslims went out to meet them, and now you have a battle. That's what happened with the Battle of Badr.
All right, turning to the Quran on violence, regarding fight those who do not believe, he doesn't seem to think that this is a call to any sort of violence, universal violence against people in general. Notice it says, again, fight those who do not believe. Notice what Ibn Kathir says about Muslims fighting everyone. Notice what Muhammad said in the hadith about fighting people until they recite the Shahada. These aren't qualified in any way. Notice, even in 929, it's until we pay the jizya. If you come up to me and try to preach Islam, am I going to start paying you the jizya? No. If you come up to me and say, I'd really like you to pay me the jizya, am I going to? No. The only way Christians and Jews would start paying off the Muslims is if the choice is death, or if they're going to be fought. And that's exactly what we find when we turn to the Hadith, when we turn to the life of Muhammad, and when we turn to the Quran, and when we turn to the commentators. He says, no one was forced to be a Muslim. Really, you guys have got to read some of your sources after Muhammad took Mecca. Muhammad took Mecca, and Muslims point to this as a very peaceful instance in the life of Muhammad. He could have slaughtered everyone under the rules of warfare of that day. True. And he didn't. Only a couple people were killed. So that seems very peaceful. What happened next? Well, a little later, Muhammad was returning, and he said he wanted to perform the Hajj, and he was upset because the pagans came there and they would circle naked. So he issued a command. After this year, no one who's a pagan gets to come here. And that's when you have Surah 9:5 revealed. When the holy months are over, when this 4-month period is over, you guys have 4 months. You guys have 4 months to decide whether you want to be a Muslim or whether you want to leave. When 4 months are over, we are going to kill you. And there's no forced conversions. Lots of people converted because they were going to be killed and they didn't want to leave. That's just a fact of history.
Also, in similar regards, after the Battle of Khaybar, a lot of the Jews, after Asma bint Marwan was killed by order of Muhammad, a lot of the people came to Islam after that. Oh, answer me this. Why would people all of a sudden come to Islam when they're seeing people getting killed? It says very clearly at that point, people came to Islam because they saw the power of Islam. Right there in the records.
Surah 3:28, he said, regarding don't take people as non-believers as friends and protectors, he says, well, in Christianity you have don't be yoked together with unbelievers. That's not what I'm talking about. He missed the point entirely. I was referring to the part where if they're more numerous than you, you pretend to be friendly towards them. You smile in their faces while you're cursing them in their hearts. And this is what you're supposed to do when you're in an area and you're outnumbered. And here in the West, we have Muslims telling us left and right, oh, we love you guys. We're so peaceful. We just want to get along. I know that some of you believe this. But I also know that you are commanded to fake. So I sometimes can't tell the difference, and that's scary.
And I'll just say that my parents are Muslim, my relatives are Muslim. I'm not saying that they're trying to pretend to be friends with me. They are friends with me, they love me. I'm not saying that everyone in the West is like that people nowadays practice these things. What we are saying is that the people who are commenting on the verse of the Quran said this is what Islam means.
He says that Christians are going to be, he says that Jews and Christians are left on their own as long as they're paying the jizya, and he rejected the commentaries I gave. We have all sorts of things that refer to the Muslim attitude towards Jews and Christians. Sahih Muslim number 4366. It has been reported that the messenger said, I will expel the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula and will not leave any but Muslims. Is this a man who has a vision of a peaceful society? Of a society where Christians and Jews and Muslims are all going to live in harmony? No, I will expel them all. I don't want to see them here. Al-Bukhari,
Number 1103 in his Al-Daba al-Mufrad, Muhammad said, do not give the people of the book the greeting first. Force them to the narrowest part of the road. So you get the main part of the road, then you force them to the narrow part of it. Also in the same text, Ibn Umar passed to the son of the Caliph Umar, passed by a Christian who greeted him. The Christian greets him. And Umar returned the greeting. He was told that the man was a Christian. When he learned that, he went back to him and said, give me back my greeting. I'm not going to greet a Christian. And think about the Pact of Umar. We have this in Al-Tabari, we have this in Ibn Hazm, we have this in all kinds of sources, the Pact of Umar. Here are the rules that the Christians had to agree to. The Christians are forbidden to build churches or monasteries in their cities or nearby areas. They are not allowed to renovate such beings. They must allow any Muslim to lodge in these buildings, in their churches, for 3 nights and provide them with food. You have to feed the Muslims while they're there. They must not display any sign of their unbelief or forbid their relatives from converting freely to Islam. Furthermore, they must show reverence to Muslims and give them pride of place at their assemblies. Muslims get to sit up front. They are not allowed to use a saddle and a beast of burden, nor bear a sword, nor any other weapon. So, riding the bear back there. They are not to display a cross or any of their books as they are passing Muslims on their way. Now, should Christians ever deviate from obeying these rules, Muslims would cease to honor the covenant that had protected them. In that case, Muslims can deal with them as if they have become a people of discord and trouble. As if we break any of these rules, if we decide to fix our church when the roof is falling in, we are to be treated as mischief makers. And you know what the Quran says in 533 about mischief makers. The treatment that we're going to receive, and Nabeel already covered that. And one more passage regarding Abdullah has pointed out that according to the Muslim sources, they are supposed, as long as dhimmis are following the rules, they are not supposed to harm us. That is true. But there's a reason for that. We have it from Muhammad himself. He said, I advise you, this is from Umar. He said, I advise you to fulfill Allah's dhimma, financial obligation, made with the dhimmi, as it is the dhimma of your prophet and the source of livelihood for your dependents. You don't harm the dhimmis as long as they're following all the rules and not wearing their crosses and not rebuilding their churches and not preaching their religion. You don't harm them. Why? Because they're paying you 50% of what they get every year. Don't harm them. This is the religion of peace.
Now, there are other things that he brought up. There just simply isn't much time in the context of the debate. But he also talked about how I made a false parallel with martyrs. I said, oh, look, Muhammad praises martyrdom. How dare I say such a thing, praising martyrdom. No, I think having zeal for God is excellent. But the fact of the matter is, he says, there's nothing better than that. There's nothing better than dying in the cause of Allah. There's nothing better than fighting. Fighting in the forenoon or the afternoon is better than the whole world, whatever is in it. That's what I'm objecting to. There should be things better than fighting, namely love, peace. But this
the greatest of these is love. Very different picture.
Just one more minute. Regarding killing apostates, he says in the Old Testament there was a command to kill apostates. I agree. I would not call that a peaceful ruling. Christians aren't told to follow this, but we said in the beginning, I'm not saying there's violence, therefore it's not true. That's not what we said at all. We simply pointed out that this is a violent teaching. So there was violence in Old Testament Judaism, no doubt.
In regards to hitting Aisha, he says that, it was a tap. What is he talking about? In the hadith itself, it says, he hit me in the chest, causing me pain. Read it by yourself, number 2127. I don't see how you can say that was a tap unless you're really sensitive skin.
All right, well, our time is up. We've seen very clearly that Muslims are called over and over again in all their sources to violence.
These are Muslim sources. We're not coming up with these things ourselves. We're referring to Islam to tell us these things for itself.
Thank you, Jerry. Right. You'll be relieved to know it's time for a break. 15 minutes, please, ladies and gentlemen, and come back for more. We have now the second rebuttal. If you could please return to your seats and quieten down as well so we can hear the speakers. Thank you. Abdullah and Yahya are going to begin the set of rebuttals with an 8-minute period of rebuttals, and then after that the other side will have an 8-minute period as well, and then we go to crossfire, which I mentioned earlier, 2 minutes comment response time each, and then we'll have a chance for you to ask questions, make comments, and we'll come to that as well. So I'll hand over to Abdullah and Yahya for 8 minutes, please.
arranging the notes. Okay, they brought the issue of abrogation again. Ibn Kathir insists that this is that verse 29 is an abrogation. Firstly, Muslim scholars aren't agreeing on abrogation. Right? If you're going to say that, well, this guy believes in it, and that, but there are other guys who don't believe in it. In fact, there's quite a lot of dispute between scholars about which is abrogated, which is not. If that's your case, I can bring you a Christian scholar that believes in the Pope is infallible. Must you take that too? You know what I'm saying? Ibn Kathir is not the foremost authority. Isn't it interesting when people quote certain scholars who say something that they think they like? They say this person is the greatest authority in the whole of Islam. I say, no, it is not. There's many other, sometimes even better commentators. So I don't believe it's abrogated, and even then, it's Ibn Kathir has no different opinion in terms of the fifth, in terms of the understanding of this verse, than other Muslim interpreters or scholars of fifth. When he says fight those disbelieve again, and he goes, see, when he says no, those who hold forbidden or others held forbidden, this is just something that comes after. Just it says out of those who disbelieve you're going to fight. Just also those who hold forbidden or others has not held forbidden. Why would the Quran mention this? If it's extraneous, if it's not adding any information to it, if we're just going to fight disbeliever just because he's a disbeliever, why is that included? See, it's included because it's important. Those who do not hold forbidden what God has held forbidden. And in another verse of Quran, Surah 29, verse 46, it says, and dispute you not with the people of the book, the Jews and Christians, except with means that are better, unless you see them inflicting wrong or doing injustice, which everyone will say it as. So injustice, we intervene. Other than that, we don't intervene in that sense. Now, he also mentioned the fact that that in verse, Surah 5:32, it said that if you kill one person, you kill the rest of humanity. That was referring to the Jews. There is a virtual agreement among all scholars, all interpreters, that this is an Islamic ethic. It's mentioned in the Quran. Do you know why it's mentioned in the Quran? Why is it for the Jews and Christians? Just a story for us? No, it's for us to learn by what happens to the Jews and Christians. As Muslims, we're meant to learn what happened to the Jews and Christians. So when it said that it's like very important, the Jewish scripture which said, if you kill one, it's like you kill everyone, this is a truism. It is a statement that is universally true. And as like it says in the New Testament, all scripture is good and can be used, as a Christian would believe. Yeah? Same thing. All truisms which are universal can be used in Islam. And this is what almost all Muthas and all the interpreters say. As he says, then he goes to, he mentions something from Ibn Hishaq. Ibn Hishaq concerning. Right, the politician Ibn Hishaq, he goes, yeah, we said, if you're going to reject certain things in Ibn Hishaq, you're going to reject everything. He doesn't understand what Ibn Hishaq is. Yeah. Oh yeah, we'll cover it more in the crossfire. Ibn Hishaq is a collection of history. In some of these collections, the same story has 4 versions, written in the same, one after the other. The person who's a historian, he's collecting stories, he's collecting it. You heard something? Oh, I write it down. You heard something? I write it down. This was before they had formalized Isnam checking. They wrote down hadith as in a formal form, and that is preserved. Obviously, the Mutawatir Imam Malik is a formalized hadith book, and it's very early in Islam, for example. But it has formalized checking of narrators. You see? And the contention is the contention of Ibn Hishaq is in a way sometimes the same as our contention with the gospel. See, some of the Gospels we don't know from where the church got it from. It has a name according to Luke, Matthew, Mark, whatever. We don't know who said it, who are the chain narrators. We don't know. So in this situation, when we encounter the same situation in Ibn Ishaq, we say that if a particular narration has no chain to it, no traceable chain of narrations, we reject it outright. We'll say it has no legal value. But it's going to be in the same book because the guy is writing a history from any source he can find. So again, you should actually understand this before you use this fallacy against us. The Prophet Muhammad fought against pagans. What prophet never fought against pagans? It's what you do with your prophet, really. It's simply fight against pagans. The case is that idolaters and polytheists. The Prophet Muhammad, he said, he was given commands that the Arabian Peninsula was going to be made holy. It was going to be made for only people who believed in God. And so the pagans, no idolaters were allowed to live in Arabia, because God designated Arabia to be only for people who are of the one believe in one God. So again, that's not a problem, but that's only if you believe if God sent it or not. So, of course, in Islam or not, but it's not a problem biblically. Biblically, it's not a problem. It should be a problem. As for the oppression of the Quraysh, he said that there was when after Abu Talib, the uncle of the Prophet, died, then the Quraysh didn't oppress or kill the Prophet Muhammad. So the Prophet Muhammad wasn't stoned in Taif. The Prophet Muhammad wasn't boycotted to the point of starvation with his tribe and left in a valley, desolate valley somewhere. This didn't happen, right? And they didn't plan to actually assassinate him after this point. It didn't happen, right? See, wrong. It happens. Again, if you knew history, you'd see there was oppression. There was the oppression. They tried to kill him. Then he said that in the Battle of Khaybar, the city, the Jewish city, they saw the power of Islam. This was that they were military forced to be Muslim or what have you. Saw the power. But if the Muslim army has been successful in your region, you've seen the power of the army. Let's say I've seen the power of the American army when it's going to certain countries around the world, right? The problem is when they start killing innocent civilians, then I start having a problem with the American military. And then they've gone beyond their power, which is the issue. And it doesn't say that the Muslims killed innocent civilians. It doesn't say that. Again, need to see that innocent civilians were killed. So the issue that we have to pretend to be peaceful. Yes, the Muslims, there are circumstances where we lie. Yes, I'm going to admit this. We have to lie. But we don't have to. We can lie if our life is threatened. If they say, put a gun to our head, say, pray to this idol, or we shoot you. We have the option to. God will not punish you if you actually say, all right, fine, I'll do that. Right? He won't punish you. So are you planning to force Muslims to convert to Christianity at the point of gun, or force us to leave Islam? Because if not, then there shouldn't be a concern for you, whether we actually lie for life as friends. In this country like this, usually we're not afraid of our life, so there's no need to lie. So why are you bringing it up for? As for the issue of, yes, he quoted the son of Omar and how he treated a Christian and someone. Sorry, the son of Omar, he's not a source for us. There are other sources that say Jews Christians are treated with respect. First one says that Christians will have to wear big crosses. Then another one said they have to wear no crosses. Make your mind up. And the Pact of Omar, there are two Pacts of Omar. One is a forgery, and that's the one they were quoting. The other one is historically been proven to be true, and that allows Christians the right and freedom to have their churches and build them. I can quote it here, but there's no time. The apostasy law, apostasy is a mistranslation. It really should be the treason law. And essentially, anyone who does not want to act according to the laws of the state and believes that people should be killed or fought, these people are to be judged for it. And of course, the case of Asma, there is a narration here, bring it up, which said that she was inciting violence against Prophet Muhammad. If you incite violence in any country, you're going to get locked up. And Abdullah has the Qureshi saying to the people of Medina who were pagans, some of the pagans saying, if you do not expel the Muslims who come amongst you, we will fight you and kill you, kill your men and capture women if you don't expel the Muslims. So the Quraysh were already being aggressive to Medina and urging warfare. And that comes in one time. Thank you very much.
Now we have an 8-minute rebuttal from the Christian side.
All right, I'd like to first mention that he started off by talking about abrogation. He says, not all Muslim scholars are agreed upon the application of these facts. Mind you, Ibn Kathir is not just one scholar that we're picking up randomly. We go to Muslims and we ask them, look, it seems like whoever we quote, you just throw them out the window. You say, I don't agree with that one, I don't agree with this one. So he said, please tell us who we should go to and who do you consider trustworthy. They always respond, well, Ibn Kathir to us.
And then we go to Ibn Kathir and they say, who's he? We don't care about him. Interesting stuff.
But the fact of the matter is, this is not just one person we're quoting. Oh, you're quoting a scholar. Well, the other scholars disagree. That's what he says. But understand what we're saying. This scholar agrees with multiple other tafsirs, who also agrees with Sirah literature, who also agrees with the Hadith, who also agrees with the Quran. This scholar has the explanation that fits best into the picture, and that's why we go with him. This is being ignored. He's making it sound like we're just picking one scholar over any other scholar. He refers back to 929 of the Quran, which says, fight the people from among the people of what until they fully submission, feel themselves subdued. He refers to that as if it's just some group of people who you fight because of some random beliefs. No, the fact of the matter is, it says right after that, in 930, the curse of God is upon them because they believe certain people are the sons of God. That is why they are cursed, and that is why the Hadith commentators, the Quran commentators, the Tafsir say they should be fought. He keeps ignoring this fact. It's right there, Surah 9, verse 30. He then says, look at 532. 532 says, you save one person, it's as if you save everyone. You kill one person, it's as if you kill everyone. He says, this is something we learned from the past, which we're all supposed to uphold as a universal truth. We need to understand that things that were said to the Jews can still apply to us. Well, there's also something called abrogation, where things that did apply in the past no longer apply anymore. They are not universal truths. So the question is, does this count as universal truth, or was it abrogated? And I'm telling you, by the verse of the Quran and the way Muhammad lived his life, we see repeatedly that it was abrogated. If not, then I ask you, when Muhammad slew a person, did he slay the whole of mankind? You're saying apply it as if it's universal truth. Muhammad killed, he sent for the killing of Abu Afaq. He sent for the killing of Asma bint Marwan. He sent for the killing of Kinana. Each time he did these things, was he fighting people who fought against him? No. He's fighting people who merely said words, or were trying to defend their own property. So did Muhammad kill mankind 3 times over? According to him, yes.
And I'll just point out, if you want to say that that command goes for everyone, that's fine. We go to your commentators, this refers to innocent people. According to Islam, if you reject Muhammad and you deny Allah and you say that Jesus is Lord, you do any of those things, you are not an innocent person. You don't fit into that category. And that's why Muslims could be called to fight us in Surah 929. Regarding the history of Muhammad, he says, Ibn Asaq, we don't know what Ibn Asaq is. It's a collection. Some stories are contained in four versions. This was before Isnad checking had been formalized. All of that's true. The bottom line remains, it's your earliest source. It's more than a century earlier than your great collections of ahadith. If history had been so corrupted that a great historian writing a little over a century after the events can't get it right, even though he's going around checking, if he can't get it right, then why should I believe that your historians more than a century after that could get it right? Again, you have a choice. Either say that your early historians are basically reliable, true, not perfect, but basically reliable in general, or say that you just don't know anything about Muhammad. Now, if you, regarding sources like Muhammad saying that he brings slaughter to the people of Mecca, we have the isnad right here, so true. Ibn Asaq didn't always record his isnads, but he did on this one. There are only 4 names on the list. That's a pretty short chain. So, and I'm looking at this, and these were other collectors of Sirah literature, so this seems reliable. Regarding the idea that there was an oppression in Mecca, that Muslims were oppressed, yes, we have instances of Muslims being killed. We have instances of Muslims being tortured. We have instances of people being very mean to Muhammad. We're not questioning that. We have not objected to that. We simply point out the fact that Muslims look to that and say, how horrible, this is awful, look at this violence, look at this persecution. Why don't you say the exact same thing when Muhammad does something much, much worse to the Jews? When they criticize, I mean, think about this. Muhammad is going out forming an alliance against the people of Mecca. The people of Mecca aren't supposed to do anything in retaliation. When the Jews of Medina attempted to form an alliance against Muhammad, what happened? All the men slaughtered, everyone who reached puberty slaughtered, women taken into captivity, children sold as slaves. And this is perfectly acceptable. Hello? And we could go on to the other events, to what happened in Mecca. Convert within 4 months, or leave, or you'll be killed. Why the inconsistency? Why is it perfectly acceptable to do what you want to the Jews or to the pagans, but if you even criticize Muhammad, you deserve death? And this makes perfect sense to Muslims, and I'd just like to see a bit of consistency on this one.
And when speaking of Jews, understand the Battle of Khaybar was one where people who had been forced out of Medina had fled to Khaybar. A whole group of people had fled to Khaybar, and there, these people are just working out in the fields. According to the sources, they're just going with their shovels to start a day's work when the Muslims descend upon them and start killing the men. So he's saying, well, we're not talking about killing innocents. How do you find innocent? How do you define innocent? If you're saying people who are unarmed, who are forced out of their own city, are not innocent, I don't know who is.
And none of us here are innocent under those standards, except the good Muslims here.
So I think we've thoroughly responded to what he just said in his second rebuttal, but he has not responded to everything we said in our first rebuttal. Don't forget, in Sahih Bukhari now, those of you who follow the Hadith, the way most Muslims do, will understand that Sahih Bukhari is the most authentic book of Hadith. The top of Sahih Siddha, and in that, Muhammad says, I have been commanded to fight until the people say, La ilaha illallah. He didn't respond to that. Then he also says things along the lines of, there's not anything that is greater than jihad in this entire world. He doesn't respond to that. Shouldn't peace be greater then? if Islam is a religion of peace, shouldn't that be what Muhammad said? Let me also quote Ibn Majah, also considered part of Sayyid Sitta. He says, in number 2763 of Ibn Majah, it says, it was narrated from Abu Hurairah, the Messenger of Allah said, whoever meets Allah with no mark on him as a result of fighting, he will meet him with a deficiency. According to Ibn Majah, if you don't come to Allah with battle wounds, you are deficient in your faith.
That's how central fighting is to Islam. Now think about this. We've been presenting our cases. We look to one of the last surahs revealed, Muhammad's final marching orders. Fight those who do not believe. That is a very clear statement. We turn to Islam's greatest commentator. What does he say? All people of the world must be called to Islam. If any one of them refuses to do so, they should be fought till they are killed. That agrees with us. We turn to al-Bukhari. We turn to Sahih Muslim. I am called to fight people until they recite the Shahada. We look at Ibn Ishaq, the history of Muhammad. Everything in this debate agrees with our position, not with Abdullah and Yahya.
And I hate to do this again, but I have to end up with talking about women, because the first time I talked about women, many people in the audience shook their heads as if I was trying to say something evil. But the fact of the matter is, in Islam we know, chapter 4, verse 34, came down when the man had slapped his wife so hard that he left a handprint on her face. She comes to Muhammad and she says, this is what just happened to me. Muhammad says, I would rule in your favor, but I just received this verse from Allah saying, wives can be beaten. Not only that, Abu Bakr struck Aisha violently when she held up the army of Muhammad. In Abu Dawud, number 2142, it is said, a man will not be asked as to why he beat his wife. In fact, Umar, thank you, the Khalifa of Islam, was going to beat his wife, according to Ibn Majah, 1986. He went to beat his wife, a man stops him, and Umar says, I tell you by Allah, no man is going to be asked why he's allowed to beat his wife. Thank you very much.
Thank you, all of you, for that. Right, we've now got a section called Crossfire, which is supposed to be about 20 minutes, as if we haven't been having Crossfire already then, of course. A more intensive version of the same thing, perhaps. This consists of 2 minutes comment and response time. It's much more rapid than the bigger blocks of time. I'm conscious of the time, however. It's nearly 9 o'clock. We're supposed to be out of here by 9:30, although Abdullah tells me there's some flexibility on that, because I'm anxious to get questions and answers and questions and comments from you in as well. So if we immediately go to the Crossfire section, 20 minutes it's supposed to be, 2 minutes per side, comments and response time, and I presumably will now go back to the Muslim side to start that 2 minutes, and please keep it reasonably civilized.
Okay, let's start now. I know I haven't spoken much in the debate. It's because I'm taking over last minute from my colleague Sami. I just wanted to start on a discussion on methodology, guys. You've been quoting Ibn Ishaq, Tariq, al-Tabari, left, right, and centre, as well as the so-called Sahih Sitta, which not everyone considers to be Sahih, with the exception of Bukhari and Muslim, such as Ibn Majah, Tirmidhi. Can, in future, you guys start giving us the reasons why we should accept these isnads, and who's accepted these isnads according to Hadith methodology? Secondly, you go on about historical methods with the Sirah literature. According to Joseph Horowitz in his book, Prophet Muhammad and his earliest biographers, talks about the antiquity and origin of the Isnad, and he talks about how, with Sirah authors, they incorporated the Isnad when they could, but because their compilations were such basic ones, they were the first of their type, so to speak. We can't trust everything that's in them. Ironically, Michael Cook agrees on the same thing in his article, Maghazi and Sirah in Early Scholarship.
Also, a lot of fallacy they committed is they said, well, the Sirah is the earliest literature. No, it's not. There are hadiths to trace back really early. So the Bukhari and Muslim are just when they became the famous canons, but there were hadiths which were traced back much earlier, before that time. But they want to bring it because it's not been checked. First he said, yeah, it's true, it's not been checked. Then he goes, but he went around checking. David would contradict himself when he talked about the Sirah of Ishaq. So I want him to be consistent on this and say that Ishaq didn't check or he checked. Right? He contradicted himself on this. As for the issue of Asma, the issue of inciting violence, we have narration here. She's inciting violence to kill the Prophet Muhammad, to fight against the Muslims. Khaybar, I want to challenge him. Read out to me the quote which said that civilians were killed at the Battle of Khaybar, the siege of Khaybar, and I would like the source, please.
Okay, that's it. 2 minutes over to David.
Well, that is a lot to respond to. We'll try to respond to a few things. What is our methodology? Well, we look everywhere we can possibly go in Islam. We look to the Quran. When we look to the Quran, we see peaceful passages and violent passages. We say, okay, how does Islam reconcile them? We read in the Quran, you reconcile them through abrogation. Okay, the only question then is, what were the final marching orders? The final marching orders were, fight those who do not believe. We say, we don't want to believe that that's really the case in Islam. Let's go somewhere else. Muslims, who's your greatest commentator? Well, we have some good commentators. Ibn Kathir is probably the best one. We go to Ibn Kathir. Call everyone to Islam. If they don't accept, fight them until they're dead. Well, we really don't want to believe that. Is there any other place to go? Yes, you can go to the Hadith. We open the Hadith. What's your most reliable Hadith? Well, go to Sahih al-Bukhari and go to Sahih Muslim. We open those. We find the exact same thing. Fight people until they recite the Shahada. And if we want to ask non-Muslim historians, where do you go? They would say you go to the earlier sources if you can get to them. That would be sources like Ibn Ishaq. Ibn Ishaq, we read about the life of Muhammad. Ibn Ishaq is one of the bloodiest books in history. So everywhere we could possibly go, we find violence. And then Muslims say, don't believe any of that. Reinterpret everything and throw out all of our sources. Well, if all of your sources agree with us, and you don't want us to believe what all of your sources say, I don't know where we're supposed to go, and I don't know what sort of method you would have us use.
Regarding Asma, I would like to simply say, you say that she was inciting violence. Please tell me the words she used to incite violence. To me, she was writing a poem of lament. So please tell me, you say she was writing words of violence to incite. Let me know what those are. Do you have anything else to mention?
Okay, I'll just read the poem. This is what she said. I despise bin Malik and al-Nabit and Auf and Khazraj. You obey a stranger who is none of yours, one not of Murad or Muhaj. Do you expect good from him after killing your chiefs, like a hungry man waiting for a course raw? Is there no man of pride who would attack him by surprise and cut off the hopes of those who expect? Yes, she was inciting,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's interesting that David and Nabeel say that they go to every source they can, probably because they're so limited in their scope, because they don't know Arabic. We've seen already today, Nabeel Qureshi quoted a hadith about the Prophet beating Aisha in the break. I checked it up. And the word actually used is falakada, which means to press, according to Lane's Arabic dictionary. Now, we don't know why Aisha got bruised from that, but Nabeel, I wish you would try and be a little more intellectually honest when you investigate these things, as we did mention it on our debate with David last time. As for Western scholars saying that the Sirah is more reliable as it's earlier, David, I've quoted you two that don't say that, and talk about the superiority of the Isnad. Can you quote me at least 3, and tell me what their reasons are, and tell me what their credentials are as well?
Yeah, the main contention is they don't actually quote to us any legally binding text of the Muslim. They say, this is it. They're so desperate to go to these reports, which were probably a lot of the pagan Arabs. They converted to Islam, and they still had a lot of their culture. They brought out their culture into their understandings of Islam, and so they were saying all kinds of stories and things. That's why we had to invent a hadith system to trace reliable reports. That's why we did it in the first place. You see, it's for that very fact that we need to have traced hadith. Now, my point to them is. Sure. My point to them is, will they not quote legally binding narration to show that Muslims must kill non-Muslims wantonly, and to take away their rights, or to force convert them to Islam, or to kill them because they speak about Prophet Muhammad? Because I've got a source here dated 150 years, which says that the non-Muslim is not killed for denying the Prophet Muhammad and even speaking it. It's rather, it's only blasphemy issues, which again, we believe in as Muslim Jews and Christians, or at least Christians believe in for some time.
Thank you, Abdullah.
He wants us to cite authoritative sources. Surah 929, fight those who do not believe. How could that statement be any more clear? What can he say? What can he say to make that statement more clear? I don't know. That seems like an authoritative source. If you don't like your Sunni Muslim, what do you do when you have Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim? I've been called to fight people until they recite the Shahada. That is crystal clear. If you don't agree with them, go to Ibn Kathir or something like that. Everyone agrees with us. So our case is not, hey, Ibn Ishaq says. Our case is Ibn Ishaq says, and he agrees with your greatest commentators, and he agrees with us with the Hadith, and he agrees with the Quran. There's a clear pattern here. Regarding the issue of Arabic, look, if I have spent since the 90s studying Islam and I can't hope to understand basic commands of Islam. How can this be the religion for everyone? I ask you, if no one can understand Islam without being born in Saudi Arabia somehow, something like that, what good is this? What good is this religion for mankind?
I would also like to respond to the issue of Aisha again. I would ask, without impugning you in any way, I would like to ask you, please finish the hadith. Does it not say Aisha was hit on the chest or pressed in the chest, causing her pain? That's the issue that I'm concerned with. It says causing her pain. And Aisha's been through a lot, by the way. In Bukhari 68:45, Abu Bakr struck Aisha violently. You see the same thing in Muslim 35:06. In fact, Aisha herself says this in Bukhari 58:25. I have not seen any woman suffering as much as the believing woman, the Muslimah. Aisha saying, I have not seen any woman suffer as much as Muslim women. This is me saying this.
And this was a reference to a woman who was beaten so bad that her skin turned green and Muhammad did not rule in her favor.
So I need to ask you in response, you're saying to me, why are you not going to authoritative things? Why are you not, well, we're going to the Quran, we're going to Hadith, we're going to Tafsir, we're going to Sirah, we're going to everything we can possibly imagine. You tell me, why are the commentators so confused? Why are the greatest commentators of Islam saying Islam is violent, and you, here in the West, saying, oh, why are they so wrong?
Okay, as far as the greatest commentators are concerned, I've noticed that you like to quote several commentators. Throughout this whole debate, I've heard you quote three, which are Jalalain, which is one of the most basic introductory tafsirs I've ever seen in my life. You quoted Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi and Ibn Taymiyyah, weapons come from the faith, same kind of line of reasoning. Why haven't we seen you quote from anyone like Fakhruddin al-Razi or any of our major Sunni tafsirs?
Also, they say, the Quran says, fight them until they, or the Hadith says, fight until they say, La ilaha illallah. Alright, so why jizya? Why not keep fighting until they say, La ilaha illallah? Why jizya then? Why this option for them to join the state? Why? You see, they want to restrict it because they want to say, it's like I'm saying, Jesus said, I have not come to bring peace. I've got the sword, and I leave it like that. You see, Jesus is a violent person. He says, I'm not going to bring peace, but the sword. And you say to me, finish that verse. Look what it's saying. You see, so if you're going to ask us to do something, you got to do it yourself. That's right. If you want to say, I'll take early literatures, sorry, if you want to talk about the pressing, when Prophet Muhammad pressed Aisha, thing is, there was another story where the Prophet Muhammad, he was straightening Muslims in their line, and he had this small stick, he just pushed people back. And one person said, ow, you hurt me. And the Prophet Muhammad said, did I? And he pulled up, the Prophet Muhammad opened up his shirt and said, like, take your revenge on me like I've done to you. And the person said no, and just kissed it. Yes, all right, so he crossed his wife, and he might have hurt her, and so on. It's called accidents. Accidents happen. But no, this is a situation where he deliberately hit her. He deliberately hit her. That's what they're trying to twist it as. And it doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't say he struck her. They just pressed that and it hurt her. Yeah, it goes against a more authentic narration which says that he never raised
more widely transmitted.
Yeah, a more widely transmitted that says that he never raised his hand against any woman at all whatsoever. Why don't he hold back? You know why? Picking and choosing things they can twist. Yeah, to feed their rhetoric to justify what they're saying.
Thank you very much.
I am not picking and choosing things. I want to tell you again, I really hope Islam is as peaceful as you say it is. But the fact of the matter is, when I quote these hadith, I'm quoting them for what they're saying. Now, here, Muhammad, read the hadith for them if you're saying I'm lying. In the hadith, Aisha goes out and follows Muhammad somewhere, and Muhammad is not happy with the fact that Aisha followed him, so he turns around, and in his confrontation, he hits her in the chest or presses her, causing her pain. Does that sound like an accident? Absolutely not. He also asked, why are we just quoting certain commentators? You completely missed the question that I asked, which is, if Islam is so peaceful as you say it is, why are there so many commentators who are saying otherwise? Why are they so wrong? And I'll tell you why we're quoting just these commentators, because we're actually going to the commentators, reading what they say. We're not just going to the internet and picking random things. We're going through, David and I went through Ibn Majah, we went through parts of Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, not to pick and choose things, but to see what they say. And what they say is this, repeatedly.
I have spent thousands and thousands of dollars, every dime I get, on Muslim commentaries. Please tell me, how much do I have to spend before I get to one that promotes peace towards all unbelievers? I don't know.
Fakhruddin and Razi apparently are next. If you don't mind, you phone that for them.
Why jizya? Why were non-Muslims given Christians and Jews, why were they given the option of jizya? I quoted the passage in al-Bukhari, because they're going to pay for your children. They're paying your descendants. This is your piggy bank.
I see people
right
rolling their eyes. This is Bukhari. This is not us.
I find that it doesn't matter what we quote. It doesn't matter what source we quote. We're just wrong. I'm sorry, I wanted to get on to something else, but I can't do it in 20 seconds. So I'll just say once again, what method are we supposed to use? Because it seems what Abdullah and Yahya are telling us is ignore the clearest verses of the Quran, ignore the clearest passages in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, ignore everything you read in our earliest biographical source, ignore everything and just believe us, a couple of Western Muslims who've grown up in the West and now we believe Islam is peaceful.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David.
Okay, David, again, that's a very nice rhetorical statement to make. I'm sure everybody found it amusing. However, what I've been telling you to do, David, is go back to see what these Western scholars I've quoted for you. These are Orientalists, these are not Muslim scholars, and they're agreeing with what the Muslims have been saying. In fact, Nabeel in this debate with Shadid Lewis tells us that we need to go back to scholarly peer reviews on works. Now, I've downloaded 2 scholarly peer reviews of Ghulam's translation of Ibn Ishaq. Let's see what Tivoli says. As it stands, Professor Ghulam's translation cannot be accepted as a reliable reproduction of received Arabic texts of the Sirah. Now, this is not from a Muslim journal, this is actually from a Western academic journal. So I would prefer if you would actually start going back to reliable, decent information. And as for the methodology of Sirah writers, I just thought I would quote someone who apparently Answering Islam considers as an authority since they quoted him on their website. This is al-Hafidh al-Iraqi, who wrote the book Al-Fiyat al-Sirat al-Nabawiyya. He says the following: let the seeker of knowledge know that the Sirah collects every account, whether true or false, but the intention is to mention all that is conveyed in the books of Sirah, regardless of the isnad.
Yeah, and next we're going to buy some Gnostic Gospels to refute Christianity. So anyway, as for the issue of finding unbelievers and pagans to get money to pay for your children, yeah? Why did they mention there was a tribe, a Jewish tribe, that said, you know what, we're not going to pay jizya, but our armed men, our fighting men will join your armies, and as long as we get a fair share of the booty, is it fine? You can do that, exemption from jizya. It was to fund the military effort to defend the borders and to fight against oppression. That's what it was. Why didn't they mention that? Is it because they don't know or they don't want to mention that? So secondly, has anyone here ever accidentally hurt them with their family? Who hasn't hurt them with their family, rather? Right? If you have, then are you also like the Prophet Muhammad? And what they're trying to say is a wife beater.
Well, once again, we've been criticized as if we just appeal to Ibn Ishaq. That's not. And again, if you think history has been corrupted by the time you get to Ibn Ishaq, it's surely much more corrupted a century later. But that's absolutely, don't get it wrong, not what we did. We look to Ibn Ishaq. What does it say? We look to the Quran. What does it say? We look to your most reliable collections of ahadith. What do they say? We look to your greatest commentators. What do they say? Every single place we can go agrees with what we're saying, not with what our opponents are saying. He compares us going to Ibn Ishaq with someone else going to the Gnostic Gospels. The Gnostics weren't even Christians. They had no access to good historical records that contradicted the teachings of the Bible. Was Ibn Ishaq a non-Muslim person who had no access to people who knew the history of Muhammad? Of course not. Of course not. His father had already begun collecting Sirah literature, and Ibn Ishaq continued this tradition. So he is a historian. If he didn't say all kinds of things that you really don't like, you would think he's a good historian as well. What about the tribe that didn't pay the jizya? Well, all I can say is Muhammad ordered in the Quran, 929, fight them until they pay the jizya. So all you're saying is some Muslims didn't follow what Muhammad taught. That's great. I hope Muslims in the West never do follow those teachings. But that doesn't mean that these people are representatives of Islam when they do this.
But understand also what Abdullah said. He said those people were instead allowed to fund the Muslims and to offer them fighting resources. Well, that's what the jizya was going to be used for anyway. So it's a matter of still supporting the Muslims. In a way, it was the jizya, but in more of a barter system instead of a monetary system. So yeah, it's still jizya to an extent. And finally, to appeal to rhetoric, he says, haven't you accidentally hurt a family member? I tell you, go to the hadith, read it for yourself. This is not an accident. Muhammad is upset with what Aisha has done, and therefore he strikes her, presses her, hits her, whatever word you want to use, causing her pain intentionally.
Okay, Nabeel, did I not just rebuke you on your wrong translation of that hadith, which would indicate I went down and looked at it just now? Therefore, why are you telling me to go and look at that hadith when I just have? Yeah. The whole thing would suggest the context. Muhammad accidentally beat her. And I think Al-Andalusi dealt with this incident as well. Unfortunately, I'm not carrying Sahih al-Bukhari with me because I don't have. It's a Muslim. Sahih Muslim.
I don't know anything about it.
Leave it. Secondly, as for David, we're going back to your greatest commentator. David, who said he's my greatest commentator? Who said he's Abdullah's greatest commentator? If I were to quote Pope Pius, the one that instigated the Crusades, and say he's your greatest commentator, would you allow me to do that? No, I don't think you would. So stop imposing the pressure onto me, which I don't think you impose on yourself. Secondly, yes, you are both quoting verses of the Quran. What we'd ask you to do is quote the preceding verses and the verses before that. And also quote the other verses which do not feed into a rhetoric here tonight.
Sure. So to answer though, well, really, first he said that the jizya was to feed your children, the Muslims to enjoy their various luxuries. Then he said, oh, it was for the war effort. Like, he didn't just contradict himself. Well, he did. I'm glad you changed your mind. Thanks. As for the issue of, did you see, I quoted the hadith about the Prophet Muhammad, how we treat them, how we can't harm them, harming them is harm the Prophet. He didn't talk about it. He didn't say nothing about these Sahih hadiths. Basically, he doesn't know, or he doesn't want you to know. Very interesting. Also, just historically speaking, you've ever heard of the Mu'ali? The Mu'ali were people, were non-Arab Muslims. During the Umayyad period were slightly Arab nationalists. So, and they wanted jizya tax because the zakat tax they can't control. So what they did was that if a person became a Muslim from the Mu'ali, from a non-Arab background, they still had to pay jizya, and they still became Muslim even though they had to pay extra tax because they weren't recognized as being real Muslims. They still became Muslim even though they didn't got any special treatment by being a Muslim. Why didn't they answer that one?
Okay. David, your final 2 minutes.
Regarding the us quoting Ibn Kathir, pick someone and be consistent. I did not get that for myself. I did not wake up one morning and say, I'm going to quote Ibn Kathir and go around saying this is the greatest Muslim commentator. Contact a Muslim. Who's your greatest commentator? Ibn Kathir. Okay. I quote Ibn Kathir. Hey, don't you dare quote him to us. What is this? Please. I mean, pick. I understand there are different Muslims and so on. You have different preferences. Yahya is a Shia and so on. But still, I mean, tell me and then stick with it. Give me a clear explanation of where I'm supposed to go and then stick with it. He said I didn't respond to the passage about treating the dhimmis well. Yes, I did. I quoted Al-Bukhari where Muhammad said that the reason for treating the dhimmis well is because they're going to give you money and money to your descendants. This is your source of income. This is where you're getting money for your future generations. Of course you don't want to slaughter them.
Now, regarding what he says about the hadith, I thought for a moment he said he went and read it, and now he's saying he doesn't have it, and then he didn't even remember what number it was. That's surprising to me. I don't understand. I'm not accusing you of anything. I just don't understand that. I'm telling you, people go read it for yourself. It is not an accident when Muhammad hits her. Sahih Muslim 21:27. He struck her in the chest, causing her pain. Now, finally, I want to talk about the Battle of Tabuk. Understand that there's a context for all the verses of the Quran, why they were revealed, etc. In the context of chapter 9 of the Quran, Surah Al-Bara or Surah Al-Tawbah, depending on what you want to call it, Muhammad was about to go and attack a Roman army north of the Arabian border. This army had never attacked him before. It had never shown any signs of putting an army together to attack him. Yet Muhammad said these people can be attacked. Why? Because of Surah 9:29, which says, fight them, the people of the book, until they pay the jizya with going submission, feel themselves subdued. Why? Again, the very next verse tells you why, because they're the cursed of Allah for believing that Jesus is the Son of God. It's as clear as day. The explanation, the commentary for the Quran, all of it fits together in that way.
Thank you. Right, that concludes the crossfire section, and now we move to your part of the evening. We can ask some questions, hopefully. There's a 5-minute time. I don't have time to... Okay, we just agreed with 20 minutes of Q&A, and then brief summing up from each side, and then they're going to kick us out. The gentleman here, right in front of me.
It's wonderful that as a Jew to watch Christians and Muslims debate. We Jews are neutral. But you follow each other's scriptures. In Islam, you say that Jesus is a prophet. Now, to us as Jews, the last prophet God gives us, Israel, is the prophet Malachi. So if Jesus says a prophet is not honored among his own, then Jesus is breaking the law of God by calling himself a prophet. But in Christianity, they say Jesus is God. He is Hashem in the human flesh. To us as Jews, when Jesus would have walked into our synagogue, if he had said to the synagogue, I am God, we would have stoned him to death. for blaspheming the Creator. But one question I do want to ask the Muslims to reply and the Christians to reply. On the Passover, Jesus goes into the Cheder and he starts Seder, the Last Supper, right? He takes the challah, he takes the bread, and gives it to his disciples, and asks them to eat his flesh. Then he takes the hagethen, the wine, and says, drink my blood. And then after that, he goes on to the Garden of Gethsemane, where he is crying to God.
So we're going to have a question, and we're going to speed this up because we're running out of time.
He's crying to God. So Jesus is arrested, brought before Caiaphas, the high priest of Israel.
Well, we know the story, so what is your question? But both these guys know the story very well.
Could the high priest of Israel, who has to keep the halakha of God, could he try a Jew on the 8 days of Chol Moed, which is the 8 days of Pesach? It is forbidden. So therefore, your scripture has no strength of truth in our Jewish.
I'm not sure this has got to do with the theme of this evening's topic of debate at all. Do you want to speak? I'm sorry, we're going to ignore that. I apologise, we're not going to accept that. It's not on the topic, okay? And can it be one question and not 2 or 3 or 4? Frank, behind.
Sorry.
So just stand up so we can hear you.
Yeah, Abdullah, earlier on you said that Christians divided on whether to obey the rulers. I would remind you of an important article by St. Thomas Aquinas in the Summa Theologiae on sedition, where Aquinas, the top authority in the Catholic tradition, says that if the ruler does not follow the common good, the good of the community, then it is right for the people to raise up and depose it. Well, there is a teaching, important teaching, discipline about that. Another point I already mentioned is today, I think it would be fair to say I'm aware of one episode in reported by Tabari in the life of Muhammad where after tithe, where he actually asked God to forgive those who stoned him because they didn't know he was a prophet. So I think it would be fair somehow to be.
Thanks, Frank. Okay, Frank. Abdullah or Yahya, do you want to respond to Abdullah?
Yeah, I mean, as we know, the Thomas Aquinas is great Catholic Church father and so on. Yeah, there is debate. I would say there is debate about whether we should follow ruler no matter what. But if you go back to early sources, Paul's in Romans, he's very clear on this. It's very clear that if only the unrighteous person has to fear the ruler, only the unrighteous person has to fear the tyrant. And if you are good, then you will not be molested by this ruler. And he was talking of Nero at the time, just I don't know how he could have talked there. But anyway, so if you look at it, clearly there's actually other Christian fathers, Augustine and Calvin and so on, which were saying the opposite, which were saying that basically you have to bear with patience, forbearance, again, in the face of a tyrannical ruler, and just patiently obey. And so, and that's what the law of the Christian is. They were describing. So I guess there is a response to that.
I think very briefly, but you have to take Romans 13 jointly with Revelation 13, where it states that it becomes demonic, and so you don't have to.
I would also, he addressed a question to us as well. I'd like to briefly start by responding. David will finish. I do want to make it clear to everyone. I hope we didn't give the wrong impression. Islam isn't just all violence. That's not what we're saying. Muhammad did forgive people. Muhammad did show peaceful things. Muhammad did take care of the orphans and the widows, and he showed people love in various circumstances. I'm not saying Islam is 100% violent. That's not at all what we're claiming.
And I'll say, for the first 40 years of Muhammad's life, based on what I can find about him, too bad Ibn Asad, I like Muhammad. And for the next 10 years of his life, apart from a few instances like I bring you slaughter, I still like Muhammad. It's not until later. So yes, there are all kinds of things. And even after the move to Medina and following, there are many teachings in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim where I, as a Christian, would look to those and say, that's a good teaching. That is a teaching I could agree with. So it's not that we think Muhammad was horrible in every way or violent in every way. It's just a matter of what are Muslims called to do, and at the end of the day, Muslims are called to fight unbelievers.
Right, the guy with the glasses has been patient, then the younger guy behind him, and then Adnan at the front. In that order, please. Carry on.
We're talking about Islam as a religion of peace. Please, Abdullah, we know, like Nelson Mandela was oppressed, was mistreated, and was jailed for 27 years, and he came out and he preached peace, forgiveness. We know him as a man of peace. Mahatma Gandhi, a similar story, was maltreated, was jailed for 7 years. He came out, his message was clear. Non-violent resistance, peace. The same with Jesus. He was maltreated, he was killed, his dying wish was forgive them. We accept him as a man of peace, among peaceful community. How does this compare with the example of Muhammad? Because you're saying that he's also a man of peace.
Thank you. Abdullah?
Yeah. You know what? Thank you for bringing all that up. Excellent. Nelson Mandela, man of peace. How did he get in prison in the first place? It was part of the, was it the ANC? ANC, yeah. Violent terrorist group. Funny enough, FW de Klerk spoke with Nelson Mandela and said, are you a Christian? He goes, yes. He said, did you not hear it say in Romans 13 that you have to obey the law of the land? And then Nelson had no response. Interesting, it's a very interesting effect. Also, people must understand, I'm not saying that Islam doesn't have use of force. Of course Islam has use of force. It's because it's responsible. In a way, it's like Augustine. Augustine says that Christians, we should go to war because we love. We love the people so much that we want to help them, correct and fight oppression, and even correct the people who are living in an incorrect way of life. Because we love them, we have to do it. I'm not saying that Islam is peaceful, doesn't advocate warfare. I say it does. Because there is no system that you can bring. Is it capitalism superior after all the killing and murder is done? Is communism superior after killing and murder is done? Mass murder, even after it's reached its zenith. You see, I think these guys are trying to box into their kind of understanding to say that it's they're refuting a straw man. We don't say that Islam has no violence, so to speak. We say that Islam has just violence, but for the same reason that Augustine said that Christians should also fight wars.
Okay, thank you. And the young guy, yes, do you want to stand up and ask a question?
Going to one point about the dispute over the caravan. The Christian side claimed that the Muslims stole the goods off the caravan from the pagans, and the Muslim side claimed that they were stealing what was theirs already. Can I ask where the caravans were coming from and what was in the caravans? It was because it was a confusing point.
Yeah, the caravans were coming from Mecca. In fact, before Muhammad even left, when he was talking to the Medinans, because he met with them once in 620 AD, before leaving in 621 AD, 622 AD, the Meccans said, this man is conspiring with Medinans, but our caravans go straight through Yathrib. It was called Yathrib at the time. Our caravans go straight through Yathrib. So even before Muhammad left, the Muslims were concerned about what would happen to their caravans because they passed through that direction. So it was a Meccan caravan. And he does have, in that effect, the right to say, well, it was their goods. But I've never actually read that it was their goods that were being attacked. It's possible, sure. But I've never seen anywhere where it was. And I'm just asking for the source where he says it was.
And on the issue of the caravans, if you read what we find among the customs of that time, anyone in the city who had anything to contribute would contribute it to the caravan. All the goods would be carried up to some place to trade. And if you would hope that you would return with some extra money. So there's no clear idea here that these were Muslim goods. It certainly wasn't. What we find, though, is that Muhammad was attacking the livelihood of the people of Mecca. This is how many of the people earned their living. And Muhammad attacked that. If your caravan did not come back, you might starve to death. And I would say this was terrorism.
Right, I've just been informed indirectly that we've got 5 minutes. I'm going to be a bit naughty. I'm going to try and push that. But we are under pressure to wrap up the evening. I'll do a couple more speakers, and then we're going to have to ask a couple more questions, and then the summaries after that. So I've asked Adnan, Adnan, please.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your presentation. I must say, as a Muslim student, I was frustrated by listening to you, while I was listening to you, what you have to say. Very very quickly, I want some of the things to be raised again, and then we can comment on them. Ibn Kathir, about 929, if you have read it, I believe you have read it, but not all of it. Read the whole commentary. He mentions that Romans were planning to attack the Muslims. Therefore, Muslims were this was a way of God telling the Muslims to retaliate, defend yourself against the Romans. About the woman being slapped and coming to Muhammad, you haven't read the Ibn Kathir. Ibn Kathir is great. I love him. Quote him as much as you can. Please do it. Please do it. Because if you read Ibn Kathir completely, you come to realize everything you quoted today was out of context. Ibn Kathir about this word tells us that woman came to Muhammad and Muhammad said, okay, retribution for the man. Go and slap him. You didn't mention that. You said no. Woman came back to Muhammad, and Muhammad said, no, I have received the revelation. But Muhammad told the woman, go back and slap the man on his face the way he slapped you. And later on the revelation came, and then Muhammad called her back. I have more power. The issue of Asma the poetess, very quickly. Asma the poetess was one of the tribes belonging to one of the tribes of Jews. Banu Stala, Banu Jafna, Banu Shutayba, Banu Nadir, Banu Qurayza, Banu Qaynuqa, all of these tribes. Read the Treaty of Medina. If you heard Ibn Sham, you quote again and again Ibn Sa'd. Read it. The Treaty of Medina is there. That was the unanimously agreed upon treaty between Muslims and Jews. All these tribes, they are mentioned, they willingly signed it. One of the clauses of the treaty, this became the law of the country. You are a good Christian, I'm sure, following the law of the country. In America, if you swore at someone, pushed someone, hurt someone, you should be expecting retribution. Likewise, those Jews who were living in Medina and outskirts, they were breaking these laws. Asma the poetess knew about the treaty. Ka'b bin Ashraf knew about the treaty. Ibn Abi Haqiq was also a Jew who knew the treaty. Other issues coming to, there are many issues.
I know. You're not here to give a lecture as well. Thank you for your comments, though.
I would like to comment.
By the way, Adnan, I'll be here until Monday. If you'd like to step up on stage, I'd be happy to go around two with you. Adnan comments on Ibn Kathir, says, let's look at what Ibn Kathir, I'll give you what Ibn Kathir says about 929 and the call to fight at Tabuk. Allah Most High ordered the believers.
Adnan, please, Adnan, no, sorry.
I must tell you, this is a
you can't interrupt.
You don't have the.
Brother, please do not interrupt.
Allah Most High ordered the believers to prohibit the disbelievers from entering or coming near the sacred mosque. So pagans are no longer allowed to take the pilgrimage to Mecca, which was the main source of income from Mecca. On that, Qureshi thought, Quraysh who are now Muslims, on that Quresh thought that this would reduce their profits from trade. Therefore, Allah Most High compensated them and ordered them to fight the people of the book until they embraced Islam or paid the jizya. Allah says, and then he quotes 28 and 29, therefore the Messenger of Allah decided to fight the Romans in order to call them to Islam. What was the source of this revelation? The Meccans were worried that they weren't going to get any more money from the pilgrims to Mecca. They complained to Muhammad. Muhammad says, don't worry, we're going to fight the Romans, and they're going to pay us the jizya. There's your income. There's nothing here about the Romans coming and attacking them.
Thank you, David. Abdullah wants 30 seconds to respond to this as well.
Yeah, Tabuk. What's happened at Tabuk? The Muslim army came, no Romans. Except for a bit. Okay, they're not attacking, let's go back. And they went back. Does that sound like an attacking army? You see, if they're like, okay, we must find Romans. None here, keep going, keep going. No, they waited at a place, they heard Romans were attacking it. They didn't see no Romans, they said, let's wait. No Romans, no Romans? Okay, we go back. And they did. This is a basic historical fact. Why don't they know this? Why are they saying it? I think it's because it's some doubts.
That's 30 seconds. Thank you very much. The last question, perhaps.
Abdullah, like you were complaining that they were not mentioning the good deeds of Prophet of Islam. But my question is that even if you mention the good deeds of the Prophet, that does not justify the violence that he committed. Like if you kill somebody and you forgive the other person, you are still a murderer. So how do you justify that?
Right. I didn't say that they're not mentioning the good parts. I'm saying that in the parts that are supposedly bad, those aren't actually bad. They're actually twisting it or quoting it out of context and to make it fit into what they would like to portray it as, a polished version of to suit their thesis, which doesn't. The Prophet Muhammad, yes, he fought in battles and he fought people. Yes, fine. We're not denying that. He was a prophet. What do you expect from prophets of God? And so on, yeah? But then again, we might say Jesus is nice and peaceful, but in the book of Revelations, when he comes, puts a big sword out of his mouth, and starts massacring people to a nice, peaceful pulp. And that's how he's going to bring his kingdom of peace on. Why don't mention this? Oh yeah, but Jesus, but back in the other Gospels, he's okay, he's peaceful. You know what I'm saying? There's double standards. And we're not trying to say that the good is not being left out. We're saying the bad is they're quoting is not actually bad. And they're misquoting it, and it's actually false. And that's why we're taking the task on this issue.
Okay, I'm very sorry there are no more questions. I've just consulted the speakers, and we're now going to move to a summary of their talk. So they're going to talk in the order they began this evening, which is Abdullah will summarise the Muslim position, and Nabeel then, I think, or David will both of them, in fact, will summarise the Christian position as we've heard it. I'm sorry there's not been more time, that's just the way it's worked out, so I apologise about that. Abdullah, are you ready? Sort of? Okay, I'm going to give you 5 minutes.
Okay. Now, I think we're all confused because we don't know what's being fully debated here. Because on one side they're saying, oh, their religion believes in violence. We're saying, yeah, we use violence for justice. And it's like, okay, are we actually agreeing? Well, in a way, we are agreeing. I think what's at dispute is Muhammad just? That's what we're debating on. Because yes, Islam will use physical force for the sake of justice, just like Augustine said, out of the law of love. Christians fight out of the law of love. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you love someone and you want to help them, you want to help the oppression that they're facing, or the law system that they are undergoing. And unless, anyway, sure. So all I'm saying is Islam a religion of peace? Did it bring peace and tranquility to the areas that it controlled? And here is some quotes from non-Muslim sources. Richard W. Bulliet, professor at Columbia University, said, "My newly studied case of the case, they have shown that justice was generally meted out impartially, irrespective of religion, official status, gender, not being subject to Sharia. Jews and Christians were free to go to their own religious authorities for adjudication of disputes. And in many cases, they went to the Qadi, the Islamic judges, instead." Heinrich Greitz, 19th century Jewish historian, said, "It was in these favorable circumstances that the Spanish Jews came under the rule of the Mohammedans, as whose allies they esteemed themselves the equals of their co-religionists in Babylonia and Persia. They were kindly treated, obtained religious liberty, so on." Reinhard Dozy, saying, "The unbounded tolerance of the Arabs must also be taken into account. In religious matters, they put the pressure on no man. Christians preferred their rule to that of the Franks." Zion Zohar, a Jewish historian with a very Jewish name, said, "Fast when Muslims crossed the Straits of Gibraltar from North Africa and invaded the Iberian Peninsula, Jews welcomed them as liberators from his Christian persecution. The Islamic belief is not forced upon people once the land is taken," and so on. 1,400 years of history bear testament to this. And Philip Mansell mentioned in his book Constantinople, where a rabbi was writing to the oppressed Jews in Europe at the time, under the various Christian regimes, maybe not so Christian, but the Christian regimes. "Here in the land of Turks, we have nothing to complain of. We possess great fortunes, much gold and silver is in our hands. We are not oppressed with heavy taxes. Our commerce is free and unhindered. Rich are the fruits of the earth. Everything is cheap, and every one of us lives in peace and freedom." And Adam Smith, as we know, everyone knows Adam Smith, famous philosopher, who said, "The ruin of the empire of the Romans, and with all the subversion of all law and order, which happened 2 centuries afterwards, produced the entire neglect of that study of the connecting principle of nature to which leisure and security can only give occasion." And then he moves on. "After the fall of the great conquerors and civilizations of mankind, the empire of the caliphs seems to have been the first state under which the world enjoyed that degree of tranquility which the cultivation of the sciences requires." Now, the point at hand is, I said, Islam is a rational belief. It brings peace to the human mind because it does not ask to believe in contradictory beliefs. Simple, provable, non-contradictory beliefs. Islam is comprehensive. It deals with all systems of mankind. It regulates mankind's activities. It leaves us free to smash into each other, like bumper cars and so on. It gives us like the highway code, so to speak. Me and my Jewish friend can appreciate this. Islam addresses man's instinctive nature. Christianity doesn't give one. It just says, go by the Spirit. What does that mean? Don't know. Law of love. What does that mean? Love. You know, how do you mean? How do you stop oppression? How do you stop the credit crunch from happening? How do you stop the people in Africa from dying from poverty? How do you stop it? You don't know. Just more Christian aid, that's all. But the vast majority of them won't be helped by that. Solve the problem, not the symptom. Also, Islam deals with the fair distribution of sustenance. Islam also it doesn't fight war for its own sake, it fights war for justice. I have shown this, I have proven this, I have shown that the Prophet Muhammad has said that Dhimmis cannot be oppressed, and again, they haven't answered those hadiths I quoted, completely ignored them. And I'm going to leave it to my friend Yahya, who wants to complete the rest of this.
I just wanted to comment, but if you look at the methodology of David Wood today, I can understand the predicament that they're in. They're so restricted in their resources. But if we're to go back to the academics who speak the original languages, we'll see that they have a very different image of Islam. If I were to judge Christianity on the New World Translation of a Jehovah's Witnesses of the Bible, would I have an accurate picture of Christianity? No. Likewise, I think when you're working on abridged translations and dodgy translations, you're going to have a very dodgy, abridged version of Islam.
Islam is a religion of peace. Islam is a religion of peace because it gives a method to achieve peace for all mankind, unlike the Christians have to wait for Jesus to come, massacre people, and then you'll have peace. Anyway, thank you.
We've repeatedly been accused of saying that, well, Islam allows some fighting, therefore it's just really bad. Has that been our accusation? We have shown over and over again from every source we can come up with that Islam calls for violence towards people based on their beliefs. If you disagree with Islam, you have to be fought until you're killed or until you pay the jizya. That's what we're claiming. If you believe it's okay, and there are Muslims who would agree with me, yes, that's what we teach. Right, we're not saying it's wrong in this debate, we're just saying that's what Islam teaches. He's pointed to Christian commentators. We can deal with all of that on this Thursday. Bring everything you've got, my friend. He's pointed out that he said that Islam is a rational belief founded by evidence. We'll address that on Friday and Saturday when we debate whether Muhammad was a prophet of God and the concept of God in Islam and Christianity. He asks what the solution is to the problems of the world. You have to change people's hearts. That's what Christianity focuses on. In Islam, the idea is to go in there, force them to agree with the government, conquer them, and make them agree with everything Muhammad has forbidden and given. Christianity seeks to change people's hearts so that they love each other. And I tell you, if people follow Christ's commands to love one another as God loves us, there would be peace and joy from pole to pole.
And I also want to talk briefly about the response he gave for the Battle of Tabuk. He says, well, if they went and just sat there and didn't fight a Roman army and came back, doesn't that sound like a defensive army? I will tell you this, that if you actually read the accounts in the history books, what it says is these men went out to fight the Romans and could not find them and came back. It's not that they were waiting to find a defense, where they went there, the Romans weren't there, because they couldn't find them, and then they came back. So yes, this falls perfectly in line. Read the accounts for yourself. I'm not making these things up. So finally, I would like to approach the overview of what's been said by Adnan and Yahya. I'm sorry, Abdullah and Yahya. I've been saying your name the whole time, I'm sorry. Abdullah and Yahya. They've been saying that in Islam there is violence, sure, but it's part of the justice system. You need the violence or these acts that you call violence in order to regulate the system and make sure everything flows smoothly. I would just like to briefly say, why is it then that we cannot discuss these things in Muslim countries? Why is it that in a Muslim country I would not be able to have this debate here? Why is it that we have to go to a Western country in order to be able to discuss these things without me being worried about getting killed? Why is it then that two women who are out in a Muslim country right now who say, I have now become Christian, this is Iran, two women right now in Iran who became Christian 4 months ago are in prison for their beliefs and are waiting their execution? Is it simply because there's some sort of system of justice that needs to be upheld? That's why these two women are being killed? No, it's for their beliefs, straightforward. Why is it that there's violence against women, against apostates, against homosexuals, against all these things in the Quran, in the Hadith? It's very clear statements that these problems are supposed to be finished with violence. I tell you, love would be able to handle these situations a lot better. The violence is part of a system that includes violence, and that's what I'm saying. It's not making a better justice, it's making a violent justice, and therefore Islam is not a religion of peace, it's a religion of violence and peace. Peace when there's no violence necessary, but if there's violence in order to make the peace, then let the violence be. That's what Islam looks like when we study the sources.
Just to sum up, I think the issue of Asma being killed by Muslims is important. Yes, Asma did call for people to fight the Muslims. Why? We know from the sources. Abu Afak had been killed by Muslims for saying this: long have I lived, but never have I seen an assembly or collection of people more faithful to the undertaking and their allies when called upon than the sons of Caleb when they assembled. Men who overthrew mountains and never submitted. A rider, Muhammad, who came to them, split them in two, saying, permitted, forbidden of all sorts of things. Had you believed in glory or kingship, you would have followed Tuba.
1 minute.
He said this, and he was killed at the command of Muhammad, and this caused someone to react very harshly. And notice, the Muslims condemned her. They killed a man who was over 100 years old for saying, hey, why is everyone following Muhammad? And this is what we find in the world today. No matter what you do, if you criticize Islam, if you do anything, the solution is violence. If your wife is out of line, the solution is to be here. If you criticize Islam, violence. If you're an apostate, the solution is violence. If you're an unbeliever, the solution is violence. And this is crystal clear from the sources, and yet our friends really do believe that Islam is a religion of peace. Why? Because, I'll tell you the reason, because they've been raised in the West. Jesus' teachings about love and peace have played a role in the West here, and Muslims have now been influenced. And so I praise God for the teachings of the Lord Jesus Christ that are still having an impact on the world, even today, even in the Muslim world.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for persevering through this very long evening. Our next event is on Thursday, the 16th of July, and it's interestingly entitled, Is Christianity a Religion of Peace? David and Abdullah will be debating that this Thursday. Go to our website, www.thedebateinitiative.com, for the address and other details.